Ahoy, mateys! Welcome to the GameBuoy.org video game podcast, your twice monthly port of call for gaming news and views that maybe aren't on your radar, but most definitely should be. I'm your host, Captain Spike 2099, and with me, as always, is First Mate Slaggy McWaggy 2.
Actually, it's Final Slacktasy 14, a WAG Reborn. Thank you very much.
Welcome once again, each and every one of our lovely and beautiful listener, to another episode of the GameBuoy.org video game podcast.
GameBuoy.org video game podcast.
Today is April 26th, 2026, and this is Game Buoy Podcast episode 192, News Buoy / FanFest North America 2026. This week, we're going to clear out our backlog of news that is built up following an unexpected break. We are still planning to proceed with our previously discussed Pokopia episode in the coming weeks, so please look forward to that. But this week, we're going to tackle some of the biggest and most interesting to us news stories that popped up over the last month, as well as to discuss our opinions on the currently wrapping up 2026 North American Final Fantasy XIV Fan Fest event, which started on Friday. I'd also like to take a moment to dedicate this episode to two fine folks. First, of course, keeping with our normal tradition, I would like to dedicate this episode to the memory of Yoshihisa Kishimoto-san, widely regarded as the creator of the legendary Double Dragon as well as Kunio-kun series. These series have had a huge impact on us as gamers, as well as, the industry and the corners of the industry in which we sort of reside. So our thoughts and hearts definitely go out to his loved ones in this difficult time. And then secondly, and a little more personally, I would really also like to dedicate this episode to the memory of my beloved little dog boy, Wicket. You may have heard his voice in the background of some episodes previously. Unfortunately, he passed away the morning that we had previously been set to record a version of episode 129 or 192. It's still a little tricky for me to talk about this, but he's already been terribly missed, and I suspect I will miss him for the rest of my life. So we dedicate this episode to both of you. With that very somber reflection now in the rear view, Slaggy, I'd like to move on to some happier notes. We've set up everything that's on deck here today, but before that, let's get started, relax, and talk about some games news. Slaggy, what is the way that we rhyme?
Well, to start out, I will elaborate a little more on Kishimoto-san, as you had mentioned. He began his career in the early 80s making Laserdisc FMV games. I actually never knew about that until I was, reading about the eulogies and all of that have been being shared at this time. So I thought that was an interesting tidbit. And, you mentioned, of course, he was famous for the Kunio-kun series. He was the designer and director of the 1986 title Neketsu ha Kunio-kun, which was known as Renegade here in the West.
Well, and I will say, for me, I actually played Renegade a lot as a kid. I was an arcade kid. Renegade was like a watershed moment, right? I had no idea that was actually related to the Kunio-kun series until just in the last, 2 decades, which became like a really oh wow, that really makes sense, like sort of a missing piece of the narrative there of my understanding of the belt action genre, or the side-scrolling beat 'em up genre.
Yeah, I mean, here in the West, we know River City Ransom. Crash and the Boys was also a Kunio-kun game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so like all these games that I definitely had no idea we're all part of one big franchise. I mean, even I think like some of like the baseball and like other series like that too.
Super Dodgeball.
Super Dodgeball, yeah. So they were all Kunio-kun. And I know we've talked about that on the show before, but it's just interesting that they all kind of came out of that one genius's mind. Of course, he also followed that up with Double Dragon, which is a whole legacy unto itself. He also did some like WWF games and stuff as well. I just want to say thank you, Kishimoto-san, for all your contributions to the industry. You definitely left your mark on this genre. I mean, really, he kind of is almost like the grandfather of beat 'em up games. So our thoughts are with your family and friends, and thank you for your service.
Absolutely. And well said, Slaggy. Thank you very much for doing that. Um, all right, we're gonna throw it back a little bit here. This is at this point now old news. This is a month-old news story, but it was big enough news that even though it was our lead story a month ago when we were going to record, it still is. This is word that PlayStation, that is to say Sony, has increased the PlayStation 5 prices again. I say again, of course, because the last price increase was only just 7 months ago, back in August. This is word per the PlayStation blog, and unfortunately, these increases have already taken effect as of April 2nd. But basically, the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5 Pro, and PlayStation Portal all went up in price. Most of these devices went up by at least $50. Some of them went up by a couple hundred. It's pretty wild to me the way that this trend has really been shaking out. I know that we've talked in previous episodes about all of the myriad reasons why this is happening, but it's just really shocking to me that it continues to occur. The expected prices in the US, and obviously I'm only going to highlight the US prices since this is so old hat news at this point. You probably already know your local prices. The PS5 now, the base model is $650. The digital edition is $600. The PS5 Pro is $900. And the
Ooh,
PlayStation,
ouch.
yeah, right. And the PlayStation Portal is $250.
Girl.
I will say, and I've said here on the show, I kind of have long fantasized about getting a PS5 Pro, but at this close to $1,000 now, that for me the dream is kind of dead. Like I just can't fathom blowing that kind of money on a pro version of a console I already have that's already 5 years old.
Yeah, girl, the digital edition being 600, like that's like already a premium console price. Like I kind of felt a little bit spoiled when I indulged in a PS5 Pro purchase, but I'm like, girl, I'm glad I did when it was only like $699, because oof, that's
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had taken advantage of like a console trade-in deal or something when they were available. When the price adjustment was announced a month ago, and I ended up losing the plot because we ended up having, the death in the family that I mentioned previously. But there was actually a GameStop promo where they were like, the last days of this price point, and we're doing deals on your old hardware trade-ins. And honestly, if I hadn't had so much going on in my life as I did, I probably would have liked to have taken advantage of that and tried to corral up some value from old hardware in the house, because damn, I just can't imagine blowing $900 on a piece of console hardware. Just straight up, I would probably
Yeah.
just not game at that price point.
Yeah. Thanks, data centers.
Yeah. In a related news story here, in fact, we also got word that the NEX Playground, or is this the NEX Playground? This is a like child-focused console that uses like motion control, and I understand was actually kind of a fad among parents in 2025. It, because of the RAM crisis, is also getting a $50 price bump.
Oh no.
And that was as of April 1st. So that has already occurred now. But again, we're really highlighting it here because we're seeing all hardware getting hit by these price increases. And I really want to underline for our listenership that if you are a person who thinks you have a hardware purchase on the horizon, don't make the mistake I made with the PS5 Pro. But if you have to pull trigger on something, pull trigger while the prices are as low as they can, because it doesn't look like prices are going to be falling back down anytime soon.
And that sucks that you almost have to have like console FOMO at this point.
Yeah,
When it should be like, oh, I'll wait for it to price drop. It's like, oh,
right.
well,
Well,
it
and
might price increase.
that's why I said at a $900 price point, I'm more likely to just not game. I don't really do FOMO. I think it's really destructive. And I think that for me, when I see it in my life, I see myself doing, keeping up with the Joneses type comparison behavior. I really try very hard to root those behaviors and that thinking out of my life. So I'm really not down for this whole console FOMO era. It's a big
Yeah,
negative to
yeah.
me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember telling you when we were uncertain about the Switch 2 pricing, I was like, my limit that I'll pay is 1,000. Like, girl, I was ready to pay $1,000 for a Switch 2. What the fuck?
Holy cannoli, right? But I remember those wild days when we really had no idea what it was going to be. Um,
Yeah.
I want to move this conversation forward. I want to highlight this piece. This is actually comes to us via Silicon Era. This was published on March 25th, so about a month ago, but it is also relating to this pricing kerfuffle, and I think it's a very interesting approach Nintendo is taking.
Yeah.
This is more for the software side rather than the hardware side, although I think you can make a pretty clear connection that they're trying to save money on the physical carts with this idea. Nintendo has announced that going forward, prices of digital Switch 2 games coming from them first party, uh, they're going to be cheaper on the eShop than the physical versions will be. This is going to be starting with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book in
Yeah.
May. And this is already how things are priced in other regions. But here in North America, we have the same price for our digital as we have for our physical. And the digital copies are going to be $10 cheaper. For those of us who do a lot of digital purchasing for our Switch, that's a very positive thing. For folks who are physical predominantly, I think this could be viewed as broadly negative, and I am, obviously a little sorry for that.
Absolutely.
All right, what do you
So,
got for us?
yeah, so we have lots of news about Asha Sharma shaking things up at Microsoft Gaming, or should I say Xbox, because in a recent all hands meeting, she announced that the company, or the division of Microsoft rather, that focuses on gaming, is rebranding back to Xbox. And they're really kind of, trying to have their messaging like Xbox is back, play is back, blah, 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 all of that. She shared an internal memo that had been, distributed within the company, but they shared it out for everyone to read. I guess for transparency and PR. Honestly, acknowledge that she acknowledges the damage that has been done to the brand and that players are frustrated. They're looking at different things about things such as reevaluating the game's exclusivity. Everything was going to be like Xbox on like on PlayStation. Like that was like the big, gag of the moment when they announced that, and like, oh, Halo on PlayStation. And so, there hasn't been any specific announcements, and she did say she wants to, consider it carefully, look at data, but they are looking at that. They're also dropping the price of, I believe this might have happened already. Again, I am not currently engaging with the Xbox platform, so I haven't really followed when this occurred. Looks like it was actually just a few days ago. This article on Kotaku was on April 21st, so just recently they dropped the price of Game Pass Ultimate from $30 a month to $23 a month, and Game Pass PC got lowered from $16.50 to $14 a month. But there won't be day one Call of Duty drops on Game Pass anymore. Womp womp. Like they'll be like basically a year out if you want to play it on Game Pass for, not free, but So
And
yeah.
This is one of those things that I think is really interesting to see from afar. The Game Pass game change or price change specifically. Um, I think when they added Call of Duty, a lot of people were really shocked and were like, wow, well, for all of the sales numbers they're going to lose, like they're going to have to increase the price, right? I think we're really seeing them sort of backtracking on those calculations, right? We're really seeing them say, actually, we're going to take a couple of these marquee titles out and you're just going to buy those again, and we'll give you last year's copy in the subscription. And honestly, I think I'm on record that I think that's a pretty good approach. I don't
Yeah,
need everything day one on Game Pass, and I'm not currently a Game Pass subscriber.
right.
Hopefully, someday after the current moment, I will feel okay with subbing to Game Pass. That's just not where we are right now. That having been said, I do think it's a lot more sustainable to have, your catalog available via Game Pass and a couple of new smaller games, but people still have to buy your pillars. I think
Yeah,
that's a much more sensible business plan. And I kind of always have. Um, it was fun when I had Game Pass and I was accessing all of these pillar games, and I did play some pillar games that I probably wouldn't have played otherwise. But really, when I think about sort of the bigger picture of it, the economics of it never really quite made sense to me, and it really seems like they've finally started to figure that out for them too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they
I
could
think
always
you
do like like what Nintendo does. Oh, I mean, I can not guess not just Nintendo, but like I was thinking of God, what game was it recently that they this or maybe not even Nintendo. I guess I was thinking of like Pragmata, where putting out demos and stuff, but they could always do like exclusive Game Pass demo that is a little longer than the other demo or something like that, and then your save data carries over. But I believe Nintendo has done stuff like that as well, so I think that's why I said
yeah.
Nintendo.
Well, and I do. I think that's a really great idea. Use it as like here's a trial version, first, chapter or whatever. You get a discount if you buy the full release and you have a sub. I think there's a lot of things they could do that would make a lot of sense that aren't just giving away your huge budget games that you can't really afford to be giving away as a part of a subscription.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I still would like to see Microsoft not be involved in things involving the political atmosphere in the Middle East. I would really like to see Microsoft and the entire industry reevaluate their relationship with AI. I mean, specifically, generative AI and these
Rethink
data
their
centers and stuff.
relationships
Right.
with AI, rethink their relationships to, let's call it dirty money, rethink their
Yeah.
relationships to weapons manufacturers.
Yeah. But I feel like those are broader Microsoft issues. As far as Xbox, it really does seem like at least from what we can see so far, I think what this has been about maybe 2 months. I think it's like a little over 60 days that she's been CEO. It really seems like she is really trying to, shake things up in a good way and like kind of breathe life back into the Xbox brand. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
It very much does feel like Xbox's last chance, but it doesn't feel like the throwaway that many of us had thought we were seeing earlier this year. And I do think that's
Right.
very interesting and worth noting.
Hmm.
I remain somewhat skeptical, but I'd prefer to be impressed because as I always say, I think the industry is better when everybody is doing better. The high tide raises all ships type thought. All right. Well, then, I'm going to wrap up this segment with a news story I'm really excited about. This is the announcement earlier this week of a new initiative out of Sega. This is called Sega Universe. The goal is to spotlight legacy IP. So they're going to be doing anniversary projects. They did not explicitly say new games or game releases, although it was sort of implied. The tagline is "No old, stay gold."
Aw.
And the very charming trailer for the initiative heavily focused on some classic franchises that we haven't seen a lot of in recent years. I was really, really excited to see a lot of Sakura Tyson representation in the trailer. I saw Sega Gaga. I saw Knights. There's very clear reference to Guardian Heroes, also Rent a Hero. Just like really cool deep cuts. Obviously, they've got Knights and Outrun and Fantasy Zone. I really think that if Sega can pair like celebratory events with like retro releases of games from these various series, I think it could be a really cool moment is about to happen for some Sega fans. As a Sega fan, I am excited. Where are you at on this one?
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think some of the critiques that we've levied at companies like Capcom and Konami is like not taking advantage of their rich back catalog of, franchises. So I think it's a really smart move of Sega to do this. And I hope that we will see great things come of it and that it kind of puts the pressure on, other companies to kind of follow suit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, then that sort of wraps up that bit. Let's move into our release updates. Since our last episode, we got word of the release date for Vampire Crawlers. This is, of course, very exciting for people like me who had been very much looking forward to it before it released last week. I will be talking about this a lot during our What's Up,
Nice.
so I will not stay on this subject any longer. We also have word here that R-Type DX Music Encore will be releasing on April 30th. The DLC character Ingrid will be launching on Street Fighter VI on May 28th. Oh, fan favorite game Stray, featuring the adorable little kitty, is coming
Aw.
to Switch 2 on May 28th as well. We also got word that the Seventh Guest remake is going to be launching on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC on June 4th, and it will be coming to Switch 2 and Switch platforms later in 2026. We also got word that Speedrunners 2 King of Speed, one that I'm really looking forward to, will be launching this July. Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced was finally officially unveiled and will be releasing July 9th for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC. Disgaea Mayhem will be releasing July 23rd in the West for PlayStation 5 and Switch platforms. We also got the announcement of the single-player focused Splatoon Raiders. This is going to be releasing on July 23rd alongside a new plethora of amiibo. The new Game Freak game, Beast of Reincarnation, will be launching August 4th for Xbox Series, Xbox PC, Xbox Cloud, PlayStation 5, and PC. We've also got word that Brigandine Abyss will be launching August 26th for PC, August 27th for PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch 2. And last but certainly not least, we got word that Trails in the Sky Second Chapter remake will be releasing September 17th. That's not all for you, though. As for our retro releases, it has been a very busy 4 weeks. I'll try to sort of blaze through this. In the Console Archives series in March, we got Ninja Kid 2. That was a NES release from UPL, and Terra Cresta, which was an NES release from Nichibutsu. For the Arcade Archives, we wrapped up March with Devastators, which was a arcade Konami game from the 80s, and Final Lap, which was an arcade game from Namco from the 80s. April so far has been a pretty interesting one. The first week of April, we only had an Arcade Archives release. It was another arcade Neo Geo release, this one being King of Shogi. On April 9th, we got releases in both Console Archives and Arcade Archives. For console, it was Seicross, which is an NES Nichibutsu release from 86. The arcade release was Polaris. That was an arcade release from Taito from 1980. On April 16th, we got a dual set of releases as well. On the NES, it was Ishin no Arashi, which was also only in Japanese. This was a Koei military historical strategy game released in 1990. It's interesting stuff if you have good Japanese language skills. My skills are not strong enough for a game this text focused, so It's been interesting to poke around in.
I think you sell yourself a little short there.
Well, I appreciate it. We also got the arcade release of Konami GT. This was obviously a Konami racing game from '85. And then, last but certainly not least, this past week on the 23rd, from the Console Archives series, we got Ninja Gaiden 3, The Ancient Ship of Chaos for NES. This was a Tecmo release. And on the arcade side, we got an early proto or pre Neo Geo SNK side-scrolling beat 'em up called Street Smart. This is sort of adjacent to those beat 'em up games that we had actually been talking about, the early Kunio-kun and Double Dragons type games. So definitely a historically interesting month. I've grabbed a few of these titles. Definitely exciting stuff, and I'm very happy to see Hamster seems to be trying to do dual release weeks as often as possible. Slaggy, with all of this done, all of this said, would you like to take us to the club?
Well, welcome to the machine once again, because Echo the Dolphin Complete has been announced by A&R Atelier. It is a remaster collection that is going to include all the versions of Echo the Dolphin and Echo the Tides of Time, plus a new Echo game that, quote, extends the journey into the modern era. Girl, there is no word yet on which platforms this will release on or the release window, but I immediately thought of you because, like, I know that you legit enjoy the Echo games. I personally remember them as a kid. I don't know why, but like I was frustrated by them because I couldn't quite figure it out. But I feel like this would be a great time to revisit it because I know those games are wild from everything that you've talked about, you know, the aliens, the intergalactic adventures of Echo the Dolphin.
Yeah, I mean, it literally spans time and space.
Oh my god, is Echo the new Doctor?
Could be. No, on one hand, I don't expect much to come of this. I feel like we hear about attempted Echo revivals every so often. On the other hand, I really want something to come of this. So I really, really hope that this one has the sauce and that they really do pull this together. Especially because I would love to have the old games collected alongside a new old game.
Well, and my thing is, can you imagine the type of story that an Echo the Dolphin game would tell in the year 2026? Like, girl, if this really does happen, I hope it goes hard.
Yeah, me too. For real, me too. I mean, what would be the point otherwise, right?
Absolutely.
Echo practically exists to go hard. All right. All of that having been said, we have a
Just
couple
don't let him drag you to his dolphin cave.
And on that dark note, we have word here that since its release, Resident Evil Requiem has topped series records, having surpassed 9 million units sold. That is, of course, very exciting because we really like to see Capcom doing well. We like to see Capcom being rewarded for this current Renaissance era they're in. Honestly, I'm just really excited to see Requiem being so well received, both by the audience and on the sales charts.
Absolutely. Good for you, Requiem.
Yes, good for you, Requiem. On a very similar note, we have word that Claire Obscure Expedition 33 sales have topped 8 million.
Holy moly.
It took them about a year to achieve. And in fact, I believe that to celebrate their 1 year of release, they are also doing just a little like freebie DLC pack that has new hairstyles for everyone, like the anniversary hairstyles. I think it's a cute touch. Just really delighted to be able to report that 2 such great games that have released have found their audiences and have connected, and people have made money on them, because that hasn't been a lot of the stories lately.
Right.
Another story I was really excited to report on here, and this is actually, I think, probably more in line with what we started the Culture Club segment for, was sort of stories about games culture and ways in which games culture is influencing the larger culture. This was reported. I'm going to refer to the GameSpot article here. Of course, I have to shout out to all of the various websites that we refer to in making this show. We will link you to all of the original articles we refer to over at GameBuoy.org.
GameBuoy.org.
You can view the episode guide and view our show roll to get links to all of these news stories and more in case you want to do the research yourself. You just want to see what we're talking about, dig a little deeper, and also, most importantly, because we really want to show our work so that you know what we're talking about. All of this having been said, this one was run on GameSpot. The headline is Mamdani uses Mario Kart to explain new tax on the super rich. And basically, there was a press briefing back on April 6th. They were discussing the New York Mayor's Fund to discuss what it could do. And Mamdani, of whom I have to say I'm becoming a pretty big fan, he used what I think was this perfect analogy to describe his vision of how philanthropic donors could be contributing and to benefit the city. The quote goes, "I like to think of it this way. Government is driving the race car and philanthropy is there to give it that turbo boost to cross the finish line. Or if you are a Mario Kart fan, government is Yoshi and philanthropy is the golden mushroom, that edge we need to beat Bowser on the Rainbow Road. To belabor this metaphor even further, Bowser is corporate greed in this scenario." Right.
God,
It gives how do you do fellow kids energy, except actually this is what a lot of people need in order to understand things like this. Or like to understand, assistance as not being that different from being more likely to get a lightning bolt when you're in 8th place, right? Like these things that people have internalized, if you can put them within that framework, you can help them to understand these larger concepts. And I just think it's really fascinating to see that happening.
Yeah. And I mean, in this case,
using video games.
Right. In this case, I can almost bet that Mamdani is like a lifelong Mario Kart player. Like, he just seems like that type of guy. And I'm just like, damn, we here in California are facing a governor race where it's like, well, guess we got to choose the one that's the least worst. When, damn, just like shout out to New York City, AOC and Mamdani.
Yeah, for real.
Let's do it.
All right, I think you have an exciting news story.
Yeah, this one's really fun. So we have word that Square Enix will be opening a Square Enix cafe in Los Angeles. It is listed as opening this spring, just kind of generally, along with a Tokyo location. The LA location will be in Los Angeles's Little Tokyo district. It will have a full authentic menu and merchandise will be available. In addition, there is a new Tokyo location opening this summer, according to the Japanese website. This one will be in the Shinjuku district. You might remember that there was a Square Enix cafe in Akihabara that closed just last year. It was around for about 8 years. So that's good to know that there will be another one in Tokyo again. I always love seeing, when people will travel to Japan, yourself included, oh, look at this cool pop-up cafe or whatever, and look at this cool crossover, this Evangelion burger or whatever. I mean, maybe it wasn't an Evangelion burger, but you catch my drift. Godzilla burger, things like that. So I just think it's really cool to see something like this available here in the States. I guess I'm going to have to plan a trip to LA.
Yeah, I used to go to Little Tokyo every time I had to go down to LA for work because the hotel that I liked to stay at was only about 1.5 miles away from Little Tokyo.
Nice.
So yeah, if I was there and it was an okay time of year, I would even walk, right? Because you could still walk just 1.5 miles in LA at 7:30 at night. During the summer anyway. But I would get a little weird about walking in the dark during the winter. So then I would take, like an Uber or whatever. But man, Little Tokyo is such a neat little space. And the way that Square Enix does their cafes is so cool. I'm really excited to see them bringing that experience here in a permanent basis. And it very much makes me likewise want to plan a trip down to check it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've heard the same about Little Tokyo. We have a lovely Japantown in San Francisco, which is nearby. But my understanding is that Little Tokyo is much more like kind of built out and a little bit grander scale than we have in Japantown here. So
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different moment. And at least when I was there was a lot more like music culture stuff
oh
in
wow,
yeah, like it was really cool to go and chop it up about J-rock and J-pop. The last time I was there, it's been a decade. So,
amazing.
but
Well,
anyway,
I hope that the LA location does well, and I hope that they're like, oh hey, I guess we'll open one in Japantown and San Francisco,
fingers crossed.
right?
All right, we also got the exciting announcement that Toei, the much storied Japanese film production studio, has established Toei Games. And
Ooh,
following that establishment, they have announced the first 3 titles they will be publishing. This is going to be Killa from Black Tangerine, Hino from Ungloom Studio, and Debug Nephemy from Nephemy Studio. There are trailers for all 3 of these releases available on YouTube. They all so far look kind of like, I can't think of a better way to say this other than weird indie Japanese flavored, but like that's kind of my
complimentary.
jam. Yeah, right, exactly. So I'm sort of waiting on tenterhooks over here to see how this all pans out, but I'm
Yeah.
definitely got my eyes on Toei Games.
I had to do a double take because I was like, oh, did Koei Tecmo rebrand again? They just took the T from
Ah,
Tecmo. They're like, oh, we're just Toei now. So
no,
good
I
for
totally get
Toei.
it. Yeah, right.
So next up in our culture club, you put this on my radar because I, aside from the very surface things, do not follow World of Warcraft anymore. I know that there are many people that I am very fond of who enjoy the game to this day. But I've just been so out of the loop. So apparently they put out patch 12.0.5 and Blizzard had to issue an apology because this patch was more bug ridden than an undercity sewer, girl. Apparently, not only was new content buggy, but there was old content that was broken too. Some of the issues included there's a new prop hunt mode called Decor Duel, presumably tying into the housing. Apparently, it was like easily broken and allowed players to cheat. They had just put in a new bonus loot roll system that wasn't working correctly. One of the final raid bosses was occasionally unbeatable. Some of the classes were able to cast while moving. Girl, that sounds like a feature to me. But then the strafe buttons weren't working. Like, this seriously sounds like you remember Stefan from Weekend Update?
Oh my
It's like,
God.
I went to this hot new club called Patch 12.0.5, and it has everything: a prop hunt that lets you cheat, bonus rolls that don't work, an unbeatable raid boss, casting spells while moving, and the best part is you can't strafe. And this is an audio only podcast because it's 2026, and I guess we have to make that distinction, right? But I'm like covering my mouth with my hands right now.
Oh my God. This, I can't help but notice how many games and services have had buggy patches lately. I have to be honest, like, I know everybody is saying it's not because of vibe coding, but it feels like it's because of vibe coding or a combination of vibe coding and do we call it vibe QAing when they do QA via AI? Because I feel like
Oh,
a lot of these buggy patches
well,
would also be getting caught by decent quality assurance, right?
yeah. No more QAI, please. I don't even know if that's what it's called, but I'm calling it that now.
Yeah, like literally, I don't know. It's giving vibe coding, and I'm not a fan. That
I'm
having been
not.
said,
Yeah,
credit to Blizzard for stepping up and saying, this isn't how we want to present our game. We messed up and we're going to fix it. It actually does take some balls to do that, as we have seen from God, what is that game that you bought that's horrible?
Mind's Eye.
Yeah, the Mind's Eye developer, where they're like,
It could
anyone
have
who
just been.
doesn't like our game is a part of a criminal conspiracy against us.
Yeah, I feel like at this point, Build a Rocket Boy is basically they might as well call themselves Build a Beastie Boy because they're always like sabotage.
Oh my god.
But I have to apologize. That is not fair to associate the Beastie Boys with that trash.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move forward then so that we can wrap this segment up. I've got two more for you. First up is word that Sanrio Games is now going to be publishing games based on its characters under its new publishing arm called Sanrio Games. The first game they're publishing will be for both Switch and Switch 2. It's called Sanrio Party Land. According to their official website, it is the first of 10 planned titles coming directly from the party, or directly from the company. I know we have Hello Kitty fans in the listenership. Please look forward to this when it releases this fall.
You could just say Rob Roberts.
Ah! We also have word here that People Can Fly has acquired the Cool Down Games brand as well as publishing rights to their games. To the best of my awareness, this has been presented as a positive acquisition. You know, they're both relatively smaller entities. Fingers crossed, hopefully this turns out to be a good fit and beneficial to everybody involved. With
Absolutely.
all that having been said, it's time to head out, take a long trip, and end up in Idaho.
You're living in your own private Idaho. Living in your own private Idaho.
Oh shit, girl, we're in Idaho. Hurry up so we can leave.
Oh no.
All right, so the first exciting thing here that I would like to talk about is that the Dragon Ball Battle Hour 2026 event happened last weekend. We had actually been talking about this since back in 2025. This is one of those showcases that Bandai Namco does every year, and so I've started to, look forward to it. The big news from the gaming side of things was word that the Dragon Ball Fighters DLC for Super Saiyajin Goku 4 Daima was releasing the following week, so that is now out. We also got the announcement of a new set of DLC for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. This is something that a lot of us in that game community had been really hoping for. I think I had previously talked about a little bit. This is the Super Limit Breaking Neo DLC. It's going to be adding a bunch more characters, like 30 plus, as well as, like some new stages, a new game mode. At least on paper, it sounds like what we have been looking for in the community for that game. We also got the announcement that the game previously announced as Dragon Ball Project Age 1000 is now formally Dragon Ball Xenoverse 3.
Oh.
Yeah. And then alongside that, we got the announcement that Xenoverse 2, itself now more than a decade old, is getting the Future Saga Chapter 4 DLC this summer. That's pretty wild to me. Xenoverse is pretty cute as a game, even though I don't necessarily love it. How do I say this correctly? It's one of those games where I like the ideas of the game a lot more than I actually like playing the game itself. The
Yeah.
idea of like a soft Dragon Ball RPG where you're going to make your character of whatever race in the Dragon Ball fiction you want, and then you're going to go through and like travel through time and fix time and get to interact with all of these like canon Dragon Ball events. That's cute enough, but the actual fighting / gameplay system unfortunately just doesn't hit for me at all. So I'm hoping with Xenoverse 3, there are some gameplay tweaks that bring it a little more in line with something that does work for me.
Yeah, like I feel like they've always wanted to be like a Ultimate, but they're kind of more like a Dragon
Ultimate
Ball
Battle 22.
mediocre verse.
Ultimate Battle 22, yeah.
Side note, I love One Piece Pirate Warriors for what it is, but where's our One Piece like Ultimate type game?
Well, we do need a Ultimate game in terms of a arena brawler that has beautiful graphics and emphasizes everybody's ultimates. But if you haven't played it, you might now finally, since you've gotten to approaching Wano stuff, you might be able to play One Piece Odyssey, which was a PlayStation 4 era RPG with a pretty good budget. Like it's a pretty good experience. And I don't think it would be as spoilery for you anymore.
Lovely.
All right. Well, we do have a news story here that I think you might be a little bit mixed on, but largely excited for. So do you want to take that away?
Yeah. So, and I understand why you said that, because this news came to us from Anime News Network, which, despite being an anime news network, has oftentimes many games adjacent things. So we love to see that. This is the news that Typhon, which is an entertainment company focusing on virtual, augmented, and mixed reality experiences, not to be confused with Ultros' companion. They announced, right? They announced a collaboration with Kansai TV and Square Enix. This is for Final Fantasy XIV Chocobo Racing Experience. It is a VR experience that will be debuting at their Typhonium extended reality theme parks. The date has not yet been determined. This is super cool. I love to see this idea of Final Fantasy XIV related content getting kind of like spin-offs and like other experiences. Not for me because I can't really do VR, but very cool. I hope that the people who go to enjoy this experience.
Yeah. I will say, like, if there comes to be a context in which I can do a VR chocobo racing experience, I'm absolutely going to do it. That sounds incredible.
Like, I kind of wonder, like, is there a way that they can get it to round one? Is it just like an arcade machine, or is it like a whole ass thing? Is it like the Mario Kart ride at Universal? So I'm excited to see more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. We also had here an announcement I was initially excited for, but then things got a little different. So the Sunsoft long-term games publisher has announced Hard Edge Warzone. This is a real-time tactical card battle remake of an action-adventure game from the PS1 era released in 98. In Japan, it was just Hard Edge, but in North America, you might be familiar with it as TRAG or TRAG. This is going to launch for PC via Steam in 2026. The original version of this game, I recall it as more of like Resident Evil, but more of like sci-fi anime. Positive. Seeing it turned into a tactical card battle game has me hell of excited. Except then I got switched on to something unfortunate about Sunsoft via Blue Sky, which is I, like a lot of other people, have been really wondering how Sunsoft can keep doing these weird, surprisingly decent budgeted retro releases that, nobody talks about. They go completely under the radar, but they keep happening. And I guess after doing some digging, it has been found that Sun Corporation, the corporate overlord of Sunsoft, is involved in the bankrolling and manufacturing of surveillance technology for ICE and the IDF.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So this is one of those things where I'm not 100% sure of all the details, but everything I have checked out does check out. That is to say, Sun Corporation does appear to be the corporate overlord of Sunsoft. Sun Corporation does appear to be involved in these things the way that is alleged. So I guess also just want to buoy that to other folks that I think we really need to be thinking about the revived Sunsoft in a very similar capacity to how we think about the revived SNK. And I think that's really, really important, but also unfortunate.
Yeah. Bleh.
Yeah. In a bit of happier news, and this is for Japanese release only at this time, but we got word that Gmod is going to be doing more of their Gmod Archives Plus releases. And these 3 particular releases, which will be coming to both Switch and Steam, are 3 that are of particular note to what you might call more traditional console gamers. These are the releases Xenosaga Pied Piper, which is a spin-off set before the first game in Xenosaga, and in fact, I believe actually takes place like 100 years before the original trilogy. Let's see, there was also the announcement of Namco Chronicle, as well as Digital Devil Saga Avatar Tuner.
Oh,
Yeah. So Avatar Tuner, I believe, is already available on Switch and Steam now. Namco Chronicle is coming, and I believe Namco Chronicle is one of the adjacent titles to like that era of Namco from when they were doing like the Namco and Capcom crossovers and really trying to revitalize some of their older titles with sort of a new anime aesthetic. It was a cool moment for Namco, that early 2000s, getting to see like anime nappy or anime mappy and stuff. Just a fun moment. If you're interested in these titles, which had previously been lost to history, it is wonderful to see them available again this way.
delightful.
We also have word finally that Microsoft.
Enough said.
Right. I accidentally closed my window. Microsoft is actively investigating why some older 360 games have not been working on new consoles for months.
Oh.
This is one of those things where basically there have been select backwards compatible games that people have been unable to play, like individuals have been unable to play. I am seeing people talking about this, and we will refer you over on GameBuoy.org to an article via Kotaku. But this was really interesting to me because I feel like I've been having an adjacent issue to this for several years. That is to say, I've had this issue on my Xbox platforms since Xbox One era, where anytime I try to load the game Crackdown 1, my console crashes. No matter what I do, something with my specific Xbox account cannot load the game Crackdown 1. It happened on my
you like that
Xbox,
game from my
right?
recall.
Yeah, I do. I've talked about it here on the show a bunch. And this happens on my account on my Xbox One. It happened on my Xbox One X, and it still happens on my Xbox Series X. For some reason, across all three platforms, even if I like clear my cache, even if I clear my save data and like am trying to install completely fresh, for whatever reason, with a 100% success rate, Crackdown 1 crashes on my profile across all three of those boxes I referenced using. And other user profiles can play the game. So I have no idea what that all about, but I feel like it's adjacent to whatever they're finally looking into. And I'm glad to hear it.
Absolutely.
All right. All this having been done, all this having been said, it's time to bring the party down a little bit with a little bit of doom and gloom.
Doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Well, as I was going to say, as we're used to here, I guess when you come into doom and gloom, it's either a studio shutting down or a mobile game shutting down. Thankfully, this week it's only mobile games shutting down. I mean, I guess that's not as bad, right? The first one is that Cygames is ending service for Shadowverse, the PC and mobile card game. This will be ending service on June 30th, which will have been just a little over 10 years of service. So, not a bad run. They already ended sales of microtransactions, currency, etc. Everyone is getting a premium pass moving forward. And if you are mourning the impending loss of Shadowverse, Cygames encourages you to play Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, which is the sequel, or the Shadowverse Evolve physical card game. I never played any of these, but it looks like it has cool anime aesthetics. So
yeah, I briefly played Shadowverse. It would have had to have been probably like in 2016 because it was like pretty new at the time. I was really
on
impressed.
Your Samsung Gusto, okay.
I was really impressed by it at the time, while also like kind of feeling like, man, I wish that they would just do a version of Magic the Gathering or whatever. Of course, now we have that, and Shadowverse has become a not larger than Magic, but it has actually become an IP unto itself to some degree. So, I hope that whoever is playing is still having a great time. It wasn't quite the game for me, even though I appreciated what they were doing. I have to say, in the modern age, 10 years is a hell of a run for a phone game.
Yeah. And then another one bites the dust, by which I mean another Square Enix Final Fantasy mobile game. This one we were kind of expecting, though. I believe last year we discussed this on the show that the worldwide version of War of the Visions Final Fantasy Brave Exvius shut down. And I think even at the time we had mentioned that they had mentioned that the Japanese game would be ending service as well. So we do have an official end date for that of May 28th, 2026. So that'll have been a little over 6 years of service. So there goes another one.
Indeed.
And then another one that seems to be not too much of a concern, but is still concerning a little bit. Apparently, Nagoshi Studios, which is, the new studio from Toshihiro Nagoshi-san, that named after himself, of Yakuza fame, Ryoga Gotoku. The YouTube channel got deleted, and there was all sorts of buzz about, is NetEase going to pull funding? But then the YouTube channel went back up, and nobody said anything since. This literally just happened a couple days ago. So, hopefully it was just maybe an angry intern or something. Or I don't know, but it could be also not good.
Yeah, I'm really hoping this is a nothing burger, but man, I'm really scared for this one. We talked about this a little bit last time, I think, but holy moly, I'm bummed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now I have kind of a weird one for you here. As for why it's a doom and gloom, basically we have the objectively incredible announcement. This is where we have to start. The incredible announcement of a new piece of Neo Geo hardware. This is the Neo Geo Plus. This is a Neo Geo AES hardware. It is going to retail for $250 later this year. And as it notes in the press release, the idea of this console was basically to not use emulation and not compromise on the execution. The solution this led them to was literally making brand new hardware, manufacturing brand new chips based on the originals. I can't really think of an analog to this, but effectively, as of this announcement, they basically said Neo Geo hardware is going back into print, and we are printing new copies of classic carts. And these new carts are going to be compatible both with the new hardware and compatible with retro hardware. And the old cartridges will still work with the new hardware. So they're very specifically also targeting the retro Neo Geo collectors with this, which is a market of which I have traditionally been a part. However, there's obviously a little bit of a monkey's paw here, which is why we're talking about it during Doom and Gloom. If you've been playing the home version for a while, you probably already know what it is. The second news story about this came after the first day. The quote goes, "Within the first 24 hours, we took more paid pre-orders than our entire annual forecasted volume of the AES Plus." So basically, they sold through their entire year's worth of allotted hardware within the first 24 hours of pre-orders. That means that this initiative is almost certainly going to be a massive success. It's very hard for me to imagine with numbers like that this is going to be a failure. I do wonder if we're not going to see this having a positive ripple effect in the industry, which probably has you wondering even still why this is a doom and gloom. And for that, I would like to lead you to our next and last segment before our second to last segment before our mini discussion this week. This is Smash Hit, where we like to uplift examples of games commentary and journalism from around the internet. Smash Hit! So this comes to you from the website Read Only Memo. The article title is, "If you're going to hype up the Neo Geo Plus, at least admit you know about all the blood." And this is basically just a long form article that is really raking all of us over the coals for getting hell of excited about the Neo Geo aspect of this, while the reality of SNK's current ownership hangs over all of our heads, right? And to a degree, I have to acknowledge, I read this article this morning, and it actually made me really have to kind of look in the mirror, because I traditionally really try to avoid giving money to these corporations. I try to avoid buying modern SNK products. But I did totally self-uncritically go and pre-order multiple new Neo Geo cartridges, and probably that's money towards SNK I should not be putting. The reality is, we do know who the corporate overlord of SNK is. We understand politically what that means, and a lot of us are letting our enthusiasm for retro gaming, and in fact, one of the golden calves of retro gaming, the Neo Geo, we're really letting it it's really allowing a lot of us to ignore what we know to be true about this scenario, which is that we really need to not engage, and we need to be talking about this corporate overlord situation when these things come up. And the fact that PlayOn, who is the corporate partner with SNK on this specific venture, and SNK have managed to be so successful, obviously it is exciting for a lot of reasons for classic hardware folks. And all of that remains true, but we also really have to grapple with the reality that we're seeing an evil corporate overlord be very successful in this action, and we can't really untie the two right now.
Yeah, well said.
So if you know what I'm talking about, obviously you may not get a ton out of this piece, although I actually think you probably still would. But if you have questions about what I mean about the problem of the corporate ownership of SNK/Neo Geo as a brand, this is actually, I think, the perfect guide to really bring you up to speed right away. We will link you over at gamebuoy.org.
Gamebuoy.org.
And that having been said, we have just a couple of little rumors here that we'd like to report on over at Rumor Has It.
Rumor has it. Rumor has it. Rumor has it. Rumor has it.
Oh, Adele, you sound so good, girl.
Thanks, I've been practicing.
Ah!
All right, the first piece of gossip, rumors, hearsay that we have is word. This is coming from the voice actor who portrayed Miles Morales. This was a voice actor from the game Miles Morales. The article referred to them as a Miles Morales voice actor, and I misunderstood what they were saying.
Right. To be fair, that happened to me too.
That having been said, they referred to this voice actor, Naji Jeter, referred to the canceled and previously rumored Venom game. And he basically said that the Venom game was real, but that Tony Todd, whom voiced the Venom symbiote, once he passed away, basically the project ended up not going anywhere because Tony Todd's performance was such a part of the iconic representation from the game. It is worth noting that on Era, at least one insider has said this isn't true, but, the voice actor pretty much insists that, he thought he had a job doing this next game until it got canceled. The cancellation of the Venom game was very weird to me. I saw a lot of insiders saying it was getting canceled because of the various leaks, and that never made sense to me. the idea that it was more of about Tony Todd and maybe some other, smaller things contributing, that I could buy a little better. Did you have any thoughts on this one?
Just that, obviously, his passing, that's sad. But also, I want a Venom game that involves optional romance between Venom and did we know which Venom it was? Which host of the Venom symbiote it was going to be?
I think they were going to follow up from the Spider-Man 2 game storyline.
I never played that one. Was it Eddie Brock though? Because I mean,
no, actually, they put Harry Osborn into it.
Oh, okay.
I still don't really get why, but that was the direction they went with it.
Got it. Well, I think they need to make a Venom game that is basically a dating sim with Eddie Brock.
Honestly, I would love that. Make Eddie Brock and Flash Thompson date. I'd be happy.
I meant Venom dating Eddie.
See, I meant Venom dating Agent Anti-Venom, but it's fine.
Why can't we have both?
Yeah, love it. Next on Monster Fucker Buoy.
Yes.
All right.
And a lot of followers for that.
Last but certainly not least, we have word here that Star Wars Galactic Racer is going to be releasing October 6th. This is due to a Steam entry that was not flagged with private or whatever, so it was ended up being a publicly viewable entry. It was briefly listed as October 6th, and multiple people in the know were repeating it. So I do think that this one is going to probably coalesce. I think Star Wars Galactic Racer will be in our little consoles this October, and as I'm looking forward to this game, I think that's exciting.
Hell yeah.
All right, all of that having been done, all of this having been said, we have finally made it to our mini discussion, the North American 2026 Final Fantasy XIV Fan Fest. All right, so I, like many, I think, was watching FanFest via the official live streams. I was really excited that the official live streams for the game informational stuff this year was a free stream. I didn't have to buy a digital viewing ticket or whatever. They left the digital viewing ticket stuff for the musical performances and what have you, which I actually think is a good trade-off. I was really surprised they ended up going more than 90 minutes. It ended up being more like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be 90 minutes. They covered so much about the game, where the game is at now, where the game is going both next week and in a couple months and in 9 months. In a lot of ways, our usual complaints about Final Fantasy not updating enough and not communicating enough, it really felt like that was being very directly addressed at the Fan Fest this weekend. I want to set you up here to start, Slaggy. Let's talk a little bit then about the Evercold trailer. This was the announcement, the reveal of the new expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, Evercold. They also announced at the end of that trailer, it's going to be releasing in only 9 months in January of 2027. At least that's their plan. They also announced that they're going to be updating the free trial, and in fact, updating it in a week to add Shadowbringers content to the free trial. And, as noted, next week is the launch of the start of the 7.5 patch series. That'll probably be live right around the time this goes up for listening.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Slaggy, then, with all that set up, what did you think?
Yeah, no, I unfortunately wasn't able to watch the keynote live because I was at work. But between you texting me all of the tidbits, and I actually had some friends who were actually down there at FanFest in person. So I definitely got all of the news funneled to me before, I didn't even have to follow along with a live blog and refresh it, how we tend to do with those things sometimes when they're, not streaming or whatever. Yeah, I think there was a lot of great stuff in here. The Evercold trailer is very hype. I really like the Norse vibes that are going on there. I love the little kitten folk. I would die for them. I need a minion of them. I need a plushie of them. Um, you know, I enjoyed Dawn Trail a lot. It has been a bit of a polarizing expansion. This feels very much like an intentional return to form, so to speak. Um, I think a lot of people are very excited about it. Word on the floor at FanFest is that people were generally very positive about it. As far as Shadowbringers being in the free trial, that's amazing. I still believe that the Shadowbringers expansion tells one of the best Final Fantasy stories in the entire franchise. And so, MMOs may not be for everyone, but now more than ever, I really can't recommend any more highly that folks at least do the free trial if they think that they might want to give it a chance. Like, there's literally hundreds of hours at this point of free Final Fantasy gaming. Like, Final Fantasy 14 is not like, oh, it doesn't count. Like, these stories are just as much Final Fantasy as, any of the other games in the series. It's, this is a mainline game, and it's also a love letter to the franchise as well. So, and I also think, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but I think some of the systems changes and the gameplay evolving a little bit might bring in some people that were like, oh, well, I'm interested, but I don't really play MMOs,
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people, and there were even discussions about that at some of the Q&A panels, as I understand it, that took place this weekend, where I guess people were even asking if they might ever consider doing a 14 offline, sort of like how there's the Dragon Quest online offline version.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be interesting to see if they ever go that route. Certainly, I do think, like you say, there are people who view 11 and 14 as like non-canon because they're MMOs, but to me, both of them have some of the most complex and I'm honestly, I can't think of a word better than deep, but just like deep stories among the entire Final Fantasy franchise. Like even 6, which I love, is ultimately just not as deep of a story because in many regards, like you look at across 14 specifically, and it's 5 or 6 expansions now, it's like that is hundreds of hours of incredible storytelling.
Yeah.
As much as I love everything Final Fantasy VI did, it's a 30-year-old Super Nintendo game. It has 10-ish hours of story content, 20.
Yeah.
It's just not comparable. and that's why really I do understand how people can enjoy classic Final Fantasy but not be into this style of MMO. Okay, I get it. But if you're open to this style of game, definitely check it out because I really do. I agree with you in what you were saying that it's some of the best Final Fantasy gaming there is, and you can experience hundreds of hours of it for free. Exactly.
For free. Yeah, and specifically Shadowbringers, to build on what you were saying, like without getting too deep into any spoilers, I feel like a lot of the themes in Shadowbringers are very adjacent to a lot of the themes in the Kingdom Hearts franchise, and you know how we feel about Kingdom Hearts. So like, very, very metaphysical. It just really I've enjoyed all the expansions, and I even appreciate A Realm Reborn for what it was. We wouldn't be here without it, but Shadowbringers was for me like I was like, oh shit, like I actually played through it I think like 3 times back before they added all the cross server stuff. I was like, I'll just roll an alt because I want to play the story again. Like, that's how good it is.
Yeah, Shadowbringers is real good stuff. Because Absolutely. I don't want to linger on any one talking point for too long, I do want to.
You have to let it linger. Sorry.
The next big talking point then that I want to sort of buoy was the new armory changes. They sort of were talking about it and describing it as like an eye-level normalization. They didn't exactly use the term sinking to your highest gear score, but that was to me sort of what the behavior they described, right?
Right.
They sort of presented it as, gamers really don't enjoy having to gear up all of their individual jobs. For me, it was sort of like I can't relate at all This was of all of the things they announced, I think this was probably the one that had me sort of the most hot and cold, because I could see this being very good and beneficial, but I could also see it literally shooting the legs out from under my personal way of enjoying Endgame, which is often purely about gearing up all of my individual jobs and roles, right? Like I often don't even take them out to do any high-end content. They're just geared for high-end content. And I get a kick out of it. I get a kick out of gearing for the high-end content, even if I'm not going to run it. And so removing that for me is effectively removing the game for me. And I think the point on their side is like, well, the game is supposed to be getting the gear and then running the content. So run the content. I get it. And hopefully, it will work that way for me. And it won't run the way that I'm fearing. But at least right now, this is one of those things that on paper sounds really beneficial. But for me and the specific way I play sounds a little detrimental. What about you?
Yeah. No, I definitely understand where you're coming from. Like, that is basically what my experience is too. I mean, this patch cycle, I actually did not, just because I'd been not playing quite as much. We had Pocopia, there's a lot of other stuff that was out. So, we talked about it on the show. But I do the same thing. Like, I tend to, and actually where I'm a little different is that even though literally when you're in these raids, like you either get the tokens and you can spend them on whatever role you want, or, in the Alliance raids where you roll on specific gear pieces, you could like, oh, I'm just going to greed on that and, eventually collect the gear for that. What I always did, and this is only within the past couple expansions, I would say starting with Shadowbringers, actually, when I started like actually doing stuff that was current endgame, so to speak, not like, hardcore endgame. So like I would always do my healer first because I'm a healer main. And but then when I would gear up my tank set, I would go through the raids as a tank. And then I would do at least one DPS set. That usually would be at least one DPS set that I could gear out before the new patch cycle. And I would, go as DPS. So like for me, I was actually playing as those roles in those in those raids and stuff. So, I definitely see where it could be detrimental in that way. I think trying to look at it optimistically, that if this is how it is going to indeed turn out, I mean, there could be caveats, right? We don't know all the details yet. The time I was spending gearing up those other roles, I could do other content like the variant dungeons, deep dungeons. Like I haven't even touched the latest deep dungeon or variant dungeon. So like there's so much content in the game. So this could be a net positive. It could just be, like kind of rethinking how I spend my time when it's endgame, The other thing, it could be like, oh, like I feel like playing ninja, or I want to play as a red mage and, not having to worry about, oh, well, my gear set's not, up to snuff to do the content that I want to do. So I could actually see, for someone like me who is like got every job at max level, because I know life this game pretty often, I could actually see it being good. And I think there's something else I will speak to a little bit later that kind of speaks to endgame too. But I hear you.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just one of those things where, like, if you don't have the right gear or whatever, I guess I'm just like, okay, then you're not at the right spot to do that content. That's okay. It is how I come to it, right? Like,
yeah.
So
I totally, yeah.
I'm hoping that the adjustments they make ultimately feel good, and I ultimately find that, oh, hey, now I'm having a good time, But at least from right now, it's like, I don't think I like this.
I totally get that. But like, if I know how to do, let's say, like the Arcadian raids, and like I know the boss fights, and I know like what all of the when you have to dodge and when you have to stack. Like, my thing is that unless it's specifically like, oh, well, you need to use this is when the tank buster is, like, right, those little things. Like, I feel like if I was able to heal it and do well, and I know the mechanics, then it's not that I'm not ready, so.
Yeah, I
But,
mean,
but I
I
also hear
go
you.
both ways on it in the sense because, for example, let's use your previous ninja example. If you're not geared for ninja, and I'm not saying this about you, I'm saying this about you as a euphemism for a player. If a player, if you have ninja and you're not geared for it, then it also might stand to reason that you're also not doing the maximum possible DPS. You're not doing your optimal
Right.
rotations and stuff. So for me, requiring people to gear up fully is also sort of encouraging people to learn to play their classes while they're doing that. And I understand what you're saying that, there are a lot of situations where people level and gear their characters without actually playing those classes. And that is true for sure. But to me, at least requiring you to gear them is at least the game encouraging you to learn that play style. And so removing that, I think, is going to lead to a lot of people playing max level characters that they really don't know how to be getting the most out of because they haven't put the time in.
It would be like me being like, oh, I'm just going to go as a black mage, which I've never figured out despite being at max level.
Yeah, right. I'll just hit the buttons that are glowing. And, you could do that and you'll do enough damage that as long as it's not a hard mode, you're probably fine. But it's not going to be optimal. And I think it could lead to a whole wave of people, just not going as hard as they could go, which for me, I play games because I like going hard.
Fair.
All right, then. Moving on to the next topic. We got word there is going to be a reduced focus on dailies moving forward. They showed a new progress screen, but I don't really want to talk about the specifics of it because they said that it was still subject to change and likely would change before the final version. They did say that the goal now is for a new focus on weeklies and seasons, which will include sort of a battle pass structure. And they're not moving their patch schedule, but they are lining their patch schedule up under a seasons terminology. So like one season will now be like the patch and like the 0.5 or whatever. And then when we get the next patch, like the next mainline patch, that's the start of also a new season. I think that this could, if done correctly, be a positive thing. I'm very anti-FOMO, as noted, but I actually am not against battle pass type structures, doing missions and quests to get points to get paid rewards every so often. I actually think that when done non-punitively, it can be a very rewarding structure to use. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Slaggy.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this looks in the final product. I think anything about having less FOMO of having to log in every day is a good thing, and makes it more motivating to spend the time that you want to instead of having to log in like, oh, I better do that to get my my daily roulettes in or whatever. The potential for there being like multiple paths for progression is cool. Like if you're hella good at PvP, then like maybe getting first place in a crystalline conflict might be a way to get like a weekly reward or something. Again, I'm just completely speculating here.
Well, and based on the examples they showed, it did have, for example, XP payouts for, pass XP payouts for crafting objectives, for example. So I think it is likely that the type of thing you're describing will occur.
Yeah, and we don't know at this point yet if it's like you'll actually get like end game content gear or if it's going to be like minions and mounts, which I'm all about.
Well, one of the preview screens they showed had a progress bar that was building toward one of the like mount horns, like the mount summon horns. So
Yeah.
the indication from the UI they showed was that mounts could be a potential seasonal reward this way. Yeah.
Yeah. We already see that in the PvP series, which has been really fun and
I like that.
motivating. Yeah.
I like the PvP series approach a lot, actually. And if they're basically just doing that, but for the rest of the game, I view that as a positive.
Definitely. And I think that the same way like the Moogle Tombstone events kind of incentivize other game modes that you may not typically explore, I think that it could be great to breathe life into those different modes.
Absolutely. I could very easily see there being one for ocean fishing and that it gets people ocean fishing more.
I love ocean fishing.
Me too.
I was like, it's like, oh, in order to get this mount, you need to do Domain Mahjong.
Let's see. I'm going to move this forward just because we're going a little long now, but honestly, we could talk all day about Final Fantasy XIV.
Yep, we could.
The next big talking point was about deeper character customization. This includes color freedom for eyes, hair, skin color, including, colors that are quote unquote unnatural. I don't want to talk too much about the action skins or whatever, because I feel like that was a teaser announcement that didn't give us any real information. That having been said, for the rest of the character customization options, where were you at?
Yeah, this was really interesting. I think it's absolutely a response to modding, and that's kind of been controversial. They had that one mod shut down, and Yoshi P basically saying, we are turning a blind eye to it. If you don't talk about it, we don't care. But we talked quite a bit about that. Clearly, this feels like a response to something that fans wanted, and took it upon themselves to do. Now, it's not going to give you big breastises and stuff that the mods will. And
in fact, they even made a joke about how there's no butt slider yet.
Sliders, right. So the people who want to have those types of customization features are going to continue to mod. But something that I've noticed, like even when I'm making like a retainer, right? Like, because I don't make new characters or whatever, but even if I'm like, oh, I want to do a Fantasia for my retainer, which are the ones that are basically your bank, and you send them out for little rewards. There's times where oh, I want to make a Rogadin with I wanted to make one that looked like Ganondorf or something, and I was like, oh well, the skin color isn't quite giving me Ganondorf realness, so seeing that there are those sorts of options, or there's other species that are oh, only certain skin tones are available if you do this faction of them, the Seekers of the Sun, Mikote or whatever. So I always thought that was kind of silly. So that's very exciting for me. Where this is most relevant, the fact that it's a color picker, which I'm guessing is more looking on a photo editing app, and you can go on the whole spectrum of colors instead of little color palettes watches. There have been times where I've done hair color or whatever, and I'm well, this color looks all right, but I want it to exactly I want the highlights of my hair to match this part of my gear, and I can't get it the exact match, and that can be really frustrating as someone who really likes to color coordinate and stuff, right? So just having the color selection being more open is great, even though I don't plan on giving myself purple skin or whatever. I think it's also cute that they talked about you'll be able to toggle off parts of gear, if you don't want a belt, or you don't want a little sash on a dress or whatever, you can kind of toggle parts on and off. And so I think that's really cool to allow more customization there. The last thing I will say is that it was very aura-phobic, that they didn't show any aura examples. I was dying to know, not that I would, but will they let you dye your horns? Some people might want purple horns.
Yeah, I would honestly, my thing is I wouldn't want to dye them unless I had access to metallic dye colors, but then, oh girl.
Ooh, are you gonna be are you talking about having metallic green skin?
Well, yeah, be femme dragon girl with metallic green skin and then silver horns. Could be sick as fuck.
Oh shit! You would straight up Fantasia to an aura if you could be a
potentially
metallic girl?
I could imagine it.
Shit, girl.
I could imagine it. I'm not saying I would for sure, but I could imagine it.
Oh shit! Well, I kind of hope that they let you do that then, because that would be fierce as fuck.
Colors, please. All right, so then we got to probably the biggest announcement of the event, in my opinion. I'm just gonna say, upfront that I am simultaneously excited to experience this and skeptical that it's going to work as well as the team thinks. This is the Reborn and Evolved combat modes. If you haven't heard yet, basically all of the old classes that are already in the game, all of the jobs, are going to have 2 combat modes as of this expansion. You're going to have the Reborn version, which is basically how your character has played since A Realm Reborn released. And you'll have the Evolved version, which is the new combat mode for this expansion. It is supposed to highlight character individuality and job fantasy. It is also supposed to reduce some of the controller bloat and make the controls and the general gameplay more intuitive. On paper, all of that sounds good. It should be dismantling, the 2-minute meta, which I think for a lot of us is a barrier for high level play, because I just cannot really get that 2-minute meta. That is just not how my brain works.
Yeah, pop this potion now and then use this ability.
Yeah, exactly. That is just not me. So I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about what it means for the game. But, and I know you have some thoughts on this. I just don't long term see them balancing the Reborn combat sets and the Evolved combat sets beyond maybe one expansion. To me, this seems like not a shortcut exactly, but sort of like a tool to give us long-term players a sort of a path to this new gameplay style, to the new path to the Evolved gameplay style, because all of the new jobs are only going to play in the Evolved style. And that tells me that the Evolved style is the way of the future. They're not making new move sets for Reborn. So I'm trepidatious. I'm a little skeptical, but I am optimistic. Slaggy, what are your thoughts on the Reborn Evolved combat dichotomy that we've been presented?
Yeah. So what you're saying is kind of that Reborn is the current CEO, Evolved is the new incoming CVO, that the Reborn mode is staying on in a supervisory role for a little bit before fully handing the reins over to Evolved mode.
Yes, that actually ended up being exactly what I'm thinking. But in that same regard, how a CEO in that position is kind of a little bit of a lame duck, I think Reborn mode is going to be a little bit of a lame duck, particularly when you consider Yoshi P has already acknowledged that the Evolved mode he expects to be tuned a little stronger.
Yeah. I love how I just basically reverse Memdani'd there and used corporate metaphor to talk about a game mode.
Damn, no, you did.
I do wonder about how they will balance that long term. If you do the math, we have 21 jobs right now. Is that correct? You add 21. I think
that's what they said.
Yeah. So I think we have 21 right now. We're just talking about combat jobs, of course. Add 21 more for the Evolved mode, which is 42. The 2 new jobs, 44. Then you have to factor that PvP jobs already play differently than PvE jobs, right? Like, that's going to be like, what, 68 jobs to balance if they really do keep supporting Reborn mode. So I definitely see what you're saying, but look at the roster size of Marvel Rivals. They seem to be able to balance all those Marvel characters, and that roster keeps growing and growing. So, maybe they can do it. And, again, they've been doing that with PvP jobs and PvE job rotations and skills as it is. So, maybe they can do it.
I actually am inclined to agree that it is possible. And certainly, ultimately, it's just a matter of what is Squeenix going to be putting the resources toward, right? The thing for me, I guess, is that if they were going to long-term be supporting Reborn, I just would expect that the new jobs would also have Reborn modes is all.
Right. But as far as Evolved mode, like, I was like, oh, when I heard the announcement, but then seeing the video clips of them demoing, they did like Paladin, White Mage, and Bard, and I believe there was one other Dragoon. Yeah. Like they all look really fun. Controller bloat is real. I play exclusively on controller, and I've gotten used to it, but I tend to gravitate towards the jobs that have been kind of more recently designed to accommodate controller bloat. Sage, for example, Viper is a really good one where one ability will turn into another ability. So I've already seen them start to, kind of experiment with this idea, and the PvP jobs already kind of play like that. I say PvP jobs, but like the rotations and skills that you use in PvP, you'll have kind of a version of your 1, 2, 3 rotation on one button. So I don't think it's going to, if you're someone who already plays PvP, even just a little bit, I don't think it's going to feel too oh, this is a completely different game. It doesn't feel the same. I think it'll be good. I'm looking forward to seeing how all the different jobs turn out. And again, like the other thing I'm kind of thinking of is you were talking about if you're not geared for ninja, or for me, black mage, that I personally wouldn't, but maybe with evolved mode, maybe them being more intuitive might lend itself more to oh, well, I really can, if I understand the basics of what my skills do, and I have situational awareness of the encounter, maybe I can be flexible with what roles I'm bringing in. So I'm very optimistic. We'll have to see how it turns out, but it seems really cool. They had talked about how the game was going to be reborn. Yoshi P had teased that, and people were like, "Oh, they're going to rebuild the entire engine from the ground up, and it's going to be an action RPG." And I'm like, "Nah." So having this context, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, no, I think this is a great approach."
Yeah, and I will say, something that I think we've talked about over the years, you and I, maybe not on air, but I was a Reaper main in game for a long time, for years.
Yeah.
And I felt like a lot of the design philosophy concepts that came up with Reaper got expanded for Viper.
Yes.
And now I feel like a lot of those same concepts are now being expanded into evolved mode. But to me, that's very positive.
Yes.
That's actually why I'm so excited about the potential of evolved mode, because since I was playing Reaper a couple expansions ago and did for years, I had wanted all of the other classes to play more like that. So
Same.
This literally feels like exactly what I've been asking for years.
Yeah, should be good.
All right, well then I want to keep this moving. We also got the big announcement. Technically, it doesn't seem huge, but it actually kind of is, that they're making data center queuing changes again, and in a positive way, such now that each server will be able to connect to the players on the other servers within their realm, as opposed to as it is, or I said realm, I meant region, as opposed to how it is now, where you're sort of a little bit more siloed off per individual data center, even within the same region.
Yeah, so all North American for queuing, it'll be not just within your data center, right?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be great in terms of bringing queue times down, especially for some of the more off to the side content.
Rival Wings, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, that's perfect, right? The stuff like Rival Wings, how it was sometimes when Manderville would come out and everyone would be like, "Oh, go to this server. People are doing Manderville on this server." It's like, okay, hopefully now it won't be like that, and it will just be a much more even distribution of queue times everywhere within your region. And I think that's actually a huge positive. I'm actually really excited about this, even though the moment-to-moment impact is probably going to be relatively minimal in a player-facing way.
Yeah. I think that all of the work they've done with the cross-realm or, cross-server, cross-data center stuff, it's all worked out really well. I know that they've been kind of talking about this for a few years, and they've been working with the server infrastructure. So it's good to see this is finally, coming out. Personally, I don't have too many issues with queue time. I mean, typically I queue as healer, or, I'll
Yeah.
do the adventurer in need so I can get the bonus or whatever.
Yeah, I
But
think I
like,
only really have when I'm doing specific, like kind of weird to the side content, like Manderville, for example. Or I
right,
said
right,
Manderville, but I mean the Fall Guys collab when it's active.
yeah. Um, I but for like I was saying, like Rival Wings is a PvP mode that I've literally never done before because there's like basically if you want to do that, there's a certain time and day, and you're part of this Discord basically is my understanding, so that people can all log on at the same time to do it because otherwise like you're just going to be sitting in the queue forever.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Like literally you'll be in a queue that doesn't pop. So I'm overall really excited for this one. And I think it's being under celebrated right now. But once it's in effect, I think people are going to be like, wow, this is great.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of the full vision of the cross server, cross data center structures that they've been building. So it'll be good.
Yeah. All right. Well, then the next announcement, and we referred to this already, but we got the announcement of 2 new jobs for this expansion. Neither of them were revealed in full. We only have our little teases. But one of the cute teases is that we did get the confirmation of what types of roles they're going to be. One is going to be a new tank, and the other is going to be, I think it was a physical ranged DPS.
Yes,
Yeah, very exciting.
my favorite.
And I will say, watching the Bard footage of the evolved mode was very exciting. So the idea that, we'll have another ranged physical, that's real exciting stuff.
Yeah, and girl, I know you've loved Machinist in the past too. So.
Yeah, I've had a really good time with Machinist and Bard both. So
Yeah.
I'm really
Dancer's
excited to
fun
see what
too.
else. I'm excited to see what comes through next. What are your thoughts on the jobs?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say real quick is that I can't remember if it was in the Q&A for the attendees or the press Q&A, but they kind of acknowledged that, at this point, it's like last time they had 2 new DPS. They had a melee and a caster, and then before that it was it was Sage and was that Sage and Reaper? In Endwalker was Reaper, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so like we're kind of now back to would it have been Stormblood when we had Dancer and Gunbreaker. So like we could he kind of was like alluding to the fact that like, it was kind of easy to decide which ones to do because they kind of have like a cycle that they go through now. I thought that speaking of Gunbreaker that was great. Like Dark Knight was honestly what pushed me to start playing the game in the first place. I was like, oh, that looks so cool. And I was working specifically to get to the point where I could unlock Dark Knight. And he was wearing the shirt of a Garlean character who has like a Magitech armor, and his shirts famously are teases. Last time they announced the new job was for Pictomancer. He had a Ninja Turtles shirt, which was like, Michelangelo, Donatello, like the painters, not the turtles or the ninjas, right? Like, so, there's always a little bit of a wink and a nod there. And so like, if there's some sort of like Magitech armor element to it, that would be really cool. The whole thing about the main tank and off tank was a little bit polarizing, it seemed like,
Oh yeah, they did talk about this as well, right? That with
the new tank
focus, there's going to be sort of the idea similar to how we right now have a couple of different types of healers. You have preventative healers like barriers, and you have the restorative healers. You let the damage come in and then fix it. We're going to have, off tanks and main tanks be a little more codified now. The thing is, and I think why a lot of us are worried right now, is that the only current existent tank that is classed as a main tank is Paladin. And all of the rest of us, I say us because my tank main is Warrior for sure, are classed as off tank. And then I guess the new tank will also be the other main tank, which I guess to me feels a little bit like they're trying to subtly apply pressure to encourage people to try the new tank class. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings on this, but I really just wanted to set the stage for you to talk about your thoughts on this.
Right. I have some wonderings about this, like with Reborn mode, which is like kind of the current way that the classes play. Like, if they will play basically the same, will this only come into play for the Evolved mode? And then the other thing is that maybe it's only really more applicable in like the high level content, like the Savages, Extremes, Ultimates. Because the thing is that like if you're going into a 4-player duty, like, and you're like, oh well, oh shit, we're just gonna drop because we got a Dark Knight. We don't want an off tanking this content. Like, I presume that like certain content will be tuned to allow any tank to tank, and that's really more of the higher end content that involves like kind of them filling these niche roles. And like, I don't mind the idea of like off tanks. Like, I used to off tank in World of Warcraft. I mean, and I literally have off tanked in Final Fantasy 14 as well. But the thing is, off tanking right now is kind of like, well, I'm just DPSing. I might have to pick up some ads, and otherwise I will pick up and taunt if the main tank goes down, right? So that seems like it could be cool, but like, again, yeah, just only certain jobs being main tank or off tank, it seems a little iffy. I could see them backtracking on this if that's really how it plays out.
Yeah, and I will say, because I watched the keynote and I watched some of the panels, they did basically suggest what you're saying, both that
that's good.
What we're really talking about is for Reborn mode changes, and that it
or
is more
mode.
of evolved mode changes. Sorry, yeah.
Right, Reborn is such a confusing name, not
right?
Lie.
It really is. And also that it is more of for high-end content. And so my expectation is the stuff that we currently queue for our dailies, even if we're not queuing them for dailies anymore, I do expect that anyone will be able to tank those contents, the Alliance raid, the normal raid, the trial. My expectation is that it's really when we're getting to Savage, Extreme, Ultimate, this theoretical
Unreal
people have talked about, Unreal, yeah. That's where I think the main tank, off tank dichotomy is really going to come into play. And again, I don't necessarily feel positive about it, but because that's content I don't typically do, I don't necessarily know how important my opinion on it is.
Yeah. And then ranged physical is like literally, aside from healing, probably my favorite role to play in this game. I always end up going back to Bard, so as with you, I'm very excited about Bard, what they showed for the Evolved mode. But I would like, as far as all DPS goes, like, it's range physical all the way for me. The thing that is kind of fun for speculation is that during the audience Q&A panel that they did, he was kind of saying like, what do people think are going to be the range physical job, and people started calling out stuff. One person said Blitzball. He pointed at that person and said bad, and then people laughed.
I would love that though. Honestly,
I would have loved
a
Blitzball
Waka style
too.
fighter.
Right. Even though Waka's kind of a tool. No, I would have loved Blitzball as well. I want them to add Blitzball as like a separate mode, honestly, but
I would love that so much if it played almost like Football Manager.
Yes. I mean, basically that's what Blitzball was in 10.
Yes.
But anyway, people were saying, well, he did. One person said whip. He said, "Ooh, that's really challenging to animate." But some of the other things were crossbow, hammer, punching. I don't see how punching is unless it's like Monkey D. Luffy, and Morningstar. So interesting. He said one of those. He said he heard one person say the right one. He won't say which I'm a little surprised that even. Yeah,
it's worth noting. Saying whip is really challenging to animate isn't saying no.
Yeah, and how cool would it be to have like some Castlevania whip action?
Yeah. No, I
know. Yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking crossbow, kind of like Viking, really playing into more of the just the bow mechanics rather than the barge songs and stuff.
It might encroach too much on machinist, but we already have daggers and swords, so it's fine. We have multiple types of swords, so it's fine.
Right. Right.
I would like it to be a gunner, honestly, and to like all of
Oh,
that
like
cool like
Barrett.
well, yeah, right? Like because we have all of the cool like tech gear now from this most current X pack.
Yes.
We have all of the cool armor from that one level 97 dungeon Vanguard, I think it is. Um,
Yes.
but what we don't have are fucking laser guns and pistols, or like you say, perhaps multiple guns, including a Barrett style handgun, which would literally be a handgun, not a handgun. Um, I just feel like there's so many options with a gunner class. I think that also have their roots in Final Fantasy, while still being kind of original for 14. I would love to see them execute on a gunner or gunner adjacent class.
I would be interested because someone apparently said yo-yo. Um,
Oh,
and
that would be sick as hell.
I'm thinking of because I just recently watched season 2 of the Netflix adaptation of One Piece, and that hella cool weapon that Vivi uses. Like
Yes.
that would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, not to I don't mean to say anything negative about Final Fantasy with this, but I honestly feel like they take a lot of ideas from One Piece. Um, I had even had like a long-term joke going about, oh wow, the next One Piece island is Elbaf. It's going to be all Viking and Nordic. Watch, the next Final Fantasy expansion is too. And then it fucking is.
Right.
So like just like the last one, and I was like, oh wow, we're on Egghead Island. I bet the next Final Fantasy expansion is going to be super techy. And then it was like, oh, I guess not. Except then it was.
Right. Yeah. So I look forward to all the speculation and teases about range physical. I mean, I am definitely picking up both these jobs regardless because I level everything.
Ah, yeah. Well, and to that end, we did get the announcement the level cap is going up. So we're now
Yeah.
going to be going up to 110. I will let you say your thing, and then I will say my thing.
Yeah, this reminded me of back when we were playing World of Warcraft, right? And like level 100, oh, that was such a big deal. And then, oh, level 110, level 120, and just seeing those numbers continue to rise. And like, then, I think at this point, World of Warcraft has done a couple of level squishes, if I'm not mistaken, at least one, right? So I was wondering if they would do a level squish, but, come on, 110, work.
I have to tell you, I understand the idea behind World of Warcraft's number squish. I remember them talking about how literally just on a basic sense, like working with some of these big numbers was problematic for computers. I get it. Totally makes sense. For me, though, actually experiencing and playing through a level squish feels so bad. It feels,
Yeah.
even if you're not actually weakening, it feels like you're weakening and like so much of your time and experience has been devalued retroactively.
Seeing your hit points be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. I'm very sympathetic to like the tech challenges. Like I said, I understand there are tech challenges with having big ass numbers, and that we see this 42 million and we just parse it down. We're like, oh, 42M, move on, and the computer's like, oh, 42 million, what the fuck? But like at the same time, that's not my fucking problem. You guys need to find a solution that doesn't make me feel like my years of effort in your game have been devalued. For
Yeah.
me, that was a major part of what made, I think, my WoW experience go sour, was that feeling of like similar to like Destiny, that feeling of like, this history I have, I can't revisit it. Like it's been fundamentally changed now.
Yeah.
It's a bad feeling for me personally.
You know what it makes me think of is the feeling of well, I mean, so like if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons or any other tabletop game, which I imagine is a fair number of our listeners, right? Playing in a campaign where the characters are just kind of accessories to tell the story that the DM wants to play, as compared to a campaign where, yes, the DM has, created a world and a story and thrown challenges at you, but, where the purpose is, I want to make you feel like badass heroes. I want you to feel that power continue to grow. And I feel like that's one of the differences between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. Like, I feel like World of Warcraft has always kind of been like, oh, you're there, champion to help out, these heroes of the Horde and the Alliance, right? But literally in Final Fantasy 14, it's like main character syndrome, right?
Because you are the warrior,
of light. And like there are canonical reasons that you are getting more powerful, something rejoinings, right? Like so I love the idea that we continue getting more powerful, and all the things we've done, we've like killed gods basically, right? I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. It's Final Fantasy. If there's a Final Fantasy game where you don't kill God,
that's the bigger surprise. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that was a lot of more about 110 than I expected to talk about. So
same.
I'm excited though.
Me too. And I will say I'm firmly anti-level squish. Although if they can do it in a way that's compelling and doesn't feel bad, I will go along with them. But at least so far, I'm glad they didn't have to, and I hope it stays that way. The next big announcement, and this was a barn burner. I had to go to Blue Sky and post about it when I saw it. I mean, really, this was truly shocking.
Yes.
This was the announcement of the new Raid series theme. This is Final Fantasy XIV Cross Evangelion Ghosts of Desire. This is going to be a series of raids. It is a full-on collaboration between Square Enix and Studio Khara. I have to be honest, Evangelion is one of like the most like luxe brands in the anime world. I have had an incredibly strong affinity for the series for going on 25 years. Yeah, right.
Girl, so, 30 years.
No, you're right. That's me having an old person fail via time.
Right.
I think it's, really one of the greats. And I did not expect this collaboration. I would never have guessed this collaboration, but I am excited beyond words to see what they do with it. What about you?
Yeah, girl. Like, this sounds like the sort of thing that, like, it's a good thing that FanFest wasn't on April 1st, because, like, this sounds like an April Fool's joke, right?
Yeah. Well, it was so cute during the trailer. I was watching the keynote with my husband, and they sort of, Yoshi P announces it by like saying, please watch this trailer, or maybe you will recognize the music. And so we both like turn our ears toward the soundbar, assuming it's going to be video game music. And then I hear those first couple notes and I'm like, oh my God. I literally say like, no, it can't be. And my husband looks at me like, what? And then it starts saying on the screen Evangelion, and it's just like we're screaming at each other.
Yeah, like, this is crazy. Like, I think a lot of people were also really surprised when they did, and like the thing with these, this is the Alliance raids, which are the 24-person raids, and they typically, tie into things like, we had the Ivalice raids, which, still was Final Fantasy, but then we had in Shadowbringers, in fact, the Nier Automata raid series, which was amazing. And like, I'm like backwards, like still haven't played it yet, but like my interest in playing Nier Automata is like, oh, well, I was so drawn to what was happening in that raid series. So like, I know that they're going to knock it out of the park with this one. We were talking about like how, especially over the past few expansions, they've really started to get into some of this like deeper metaphysical stuff. So like, honestly, having an Evangelion raid series is like perfect. Like, the only thing that would be better is if
Thien and Yui Ikari are basically the same character.
Right? Like, I think the only thing that would have made me scream more, and I would have been like sobbing if they did this, if they're like, maybe you'll recognize it from the music, and then it's the notes of Dearly Beloved. Like, girl, I would have been sobbing
Oh God, right. Well, and that's kind of what we
sobbing.
were hoping, but this is probably the one announcement that's like adjacent to that.
Right, right. So no, that's wild. Like, I'm like, ooh, is it gonna be? I assume it's gonna be like, an original story. It's not gonna necessarily have Shinji or whatever, but like, I'm assuming that we're gonna be fighting angels. There's
You
gonna
know
be like
what though?
ET fields.
In the same way that like Mustadio and Ramza and the others appear in the Tactics raid, I wouldn't be shocked. The Evilise raid, I wouldn't be shocked if some of the Evangelion characters didn't. I wouldn't be shocked if they showed up in that context. Like,
Yeah, how can we not have giant Ray on the moon, right?
well, and it might even be in ways like that, or maybe one of the raids will take place with Evangelion Unit 1 fighting, what was it, the 13th Angel in the background. It's like that iconic, like they have each other grappled, and you have to like do like a whole angel fight on the ground, maybe. Like, I could imagine so many things.
Girl, I'm like, both of you dance like you want to win.
Yes.
I
Dude,
mean, I
want there to be orchestrion roles for the music so bad.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely want like Cruel Angel's Thesis as well, but even though I don't expect it, like seriously, like my thing is that like
If it's a
I
cash
hope
shop, I would buy that cash shop orchestrion. I'm
for
sorry,
sure, for
continue.
sure. And like all the different like 26 versions of Fly Me to the Moon, like give me a $75 cash shop. I'm got it.
Gonna have to
That's
get a
gonna be
new
our
in-game jukebox so that we can shuffle them all.
exactly right. So like yeah, like my thing is that I hope 30 years down the line that most people are like, yeah, I love Evangelion for the weird metaphysical themes. Like, I'm like, I even like, I wasn't, brand new to turning into anime buoy. Like, I wasn't, it took me a few years before I got around to seeing Evangelion, but it was still within like, 5, 6 years. I was in high school. So like, it had only been a few years old. And like, for me, I was like, oh my God, all this like theology and stuff. So like, I was always drawn to those elements of Evangelion that, at the time were controversial. So like, knowing what they did with Nier Automata, like, I have very high expectations. I'm certain they're going to deliver.
The funny thing is, the story aspects of the Automata raid are generally, or well, I should just say the Nier raid, are generally thought somewhat negatively about. I personally think it's really good, but if it works for you, you're going to like the actual Nier Automata and the rest of Nier quite a bit. Like if what you
right.
saw already worked for you, like, oh, you're going to like the rest then for sure.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure nothing compares to the actual game, but like just the themes and the tone, like definitely, and the music, absolutely too. So like, there's so much to look forward to. Um, I did also want to briefly, because I know we're getting very long in the tooth. Might as well call us Red 13 here, or Nanaki if you're nasty. They also talked a little bit about some of the other like battle difficulties and stuff. Like, they're adding a new difficulty level for the 8-person raids, which I believe is going to be like kind of an in between normal and savage. They should just
That's what it
call it.
sounded like.
They should just call it hard mode. Like, remember how there was like Sistasha and Sistasha hard,
Genuinely, yes.
Great Gubal library, Great Gubal library hard. Like, I miss those, like revisiting the old dungeons. So like, even though it's literally just a difficulty tier, like, because my thing is like the savages have like completely different mechanics. If the hard mode, like this theoretical hard mode that I imagine this to be, is just like, oh, it's the same basic fight as the one that you get, going through the duty finder, but you got to be a little tighter with the timing, and the mobs hit harder, and there's like an enrage timer. Like, I wouldn't mind doing some of that stuff, because we did some raiding in World of Warcraft, and we were able to manage. So like, it would be kind of fun to be like, hey, let's get a group together, and actually do progression, right? Because like like we said, we've kind of come up with our own progression for endgame because we don't engage with that content.
Well, and something that's funny, I had a slightly different approach to the third difficulty where I want it to be the new mechanics from the super hard version, but I want it to be with the damage expectation of the regular version so that we can use it
Oh,
as a tool to learn the new mechanics and use it as a tool to transition
that's a
someday.
that's a and that's a great idea, actually. I think that's good. And they've already been experimenting with that with like the new deep dungeon, which I need to get around to, and we should do that next time that we're all on. But I think that they're really looking at variable difficulty and stuff like that. They also talked about something about like progression for the 24-person raids, the alliance raids, which will be the Evangelion ones. Like we will be learning more about that at the Berlin and Japan fan fests respectively. So
Yeah, the Berlin one is in July, so I'm looking forward to that.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
All right, well, let's get us then to the end of this discussion. Turned out not to be mini at all.
Yeah, yeah.
This was a major announcement that many of us have been clamoring for years. It does have a little bit of a upsetting bullet to it, however. This was the announcement of the Switch 2 port of Final Fantasy XIV. Unfortunately, while you will not need a Nintendo Switch Online membership to play, you will need to have a Final Fantasy XIV account. And by that, I mean you'll have to have a specific Switch 2 version subscription with its own fees, which is a different way from how the subscription works on all other platforms. It has been assumed that this money likely goes to Nintendo, and that basically if you because they are going to be offering a discount on it if you are adding a Switch 2 version subscription to your currently active subscription, and they said it should be 50% off. I presume that means that basically the Square Enix cut is getting discounted to you. As far as my feelings on whether I'll be getting this or not, they're going to be doing what sounded like an open beta for everyone to try this summer. And that's going to be when I see how it works technically. If it works as well as I expect, and this discount, this 50% discount compounds for like the discount you get when you subscribe for multiple months at a time, then I could see myself getting enough of a savings and having a good enough of an experience for it to be worth it for me. But at this time, that's a lot of ifs. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, though I think it depends on that too. Like I own licenses for the game on different platforms. I've owned Mac licenses, I've owned PC licenses, I obviously have a PS5 license. I got the Xbox. The Xbox client actually ran really great, but I don't play my Xbox anymore at the moment. So I think a lot of it will depend on that as well. And they talked about they're targeting like 30 frames per second, which I think the thing that could be the most cool about this is, playing Final Fantasy on the go in a way that's not a, PlayStation Portal, which is, you basically have to be in the same household or whatever, right? Or like a ROG Ally or a Steam Deck, right? Because I love my Switch too, so that could be cool. But for me, I wouldn't see it ever being my main way of playing. Like, I play on PS5 Pro, and like I don't think I would be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go for a 30 frames per second. But as far as being available to more people who maybe they only have Nintendo, like Switch 2 and is the only thing they have, it's great.
Yeah. And honestly, because I'm the kind of nerd who likes socially playing together, like I do kind of love the idea of all of us hanging out somewhere and like sitting on a patio and like logging into like a good wireless mesh network and just like we're all gonna run this little easy peasy trials content and just have a good little time partying.
Let's do some maps.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I can see a lot of use cases where this could be a lot of fun. So I'm trying to keep an open mind until we see how it actually works.
Yeah. Now there's one last thing, and that's a little bit of a needs some console owners will need some consoling, I think.
Yeah. So this was word that basically they've talked in the past about how the PlayStation 4 client which is now obviously quite long in the tooth, has basically been getting special privileges from Sony and working with Sony in order to like keep the client continuing getting updates beyond where it is now size-wise and version-wise. And basically they were saying on stage that, they're really reaching the end of being able to do that. They expect that they'll be able to go up through version 8.3, I think they said. And so their expectation is that in probably about 2 years, they're going to have to cut off support for PlayStation 4. They basically were like, really cute about it and like, please at this time, use this time to save up for a PlayStation 5 if you need to. Which I thought was really funny and a way to sort of lampshade the horrible economics of the console marketplace right now.
Oh, yeah.
But the flip is, as we've talked about many times over the last year here on the show, some of these live games, after a point, they do get, sort of outmoded on the older hardware. And if you want the games to keep growing, it is an unfortunate inevitability sometimes. So while I don't like this, the fact that they support it for as many years as they did on PS4 and are giving people as long advance notice as they are, it's really hard for me to be upset about it. What about you?
Yeah. No, I mean, they've supported PS4 for quite a while. And remember, it was on PS3 even back in the day. So, it's just an inevitability. And it would be very sad if there are people who only play on PS4 and will have no means of, upgrading or whatever. So, that would be sad. But I also kind of feel like that situation is unlikely. I would be very interested to see how much of the subscriber base is on a PS4 platform, right? Like I'm sure those numbers are
curious. Yeah, I'm curious what that actual data looks like. I do think it is a more possible scenario than you do, unfortunately. Like, I do think there are going to be some people in that boat right now, just because I've seen people online talking about having to sell their PS5s to, keep living because of the current state of the world. So I'm sure there are some people who are going to get hit by this in a negative way that they can't work around. And I think that fundamentally fucking sucks. But like you say, I mean, there is a degree of inevitability to, like I said, when these games continue moving forward, that is what's going to happen. There was also, as a little bit of a bullet point, Koji Fox had a panel where he showed some AI art.
Oh, girl, did you see that, LFL?
Well, that's my thing, though, right? Is that there's a lot of us who feel, myself included, that because he basically talked about using Copilot to like quickly slap together a version for him of what a song would sound like, and then this little image, and the image looks so bad. A lot of us are like, this had to be like malicious compliance, right? Like his bosses told him he had to do a presentation that included Copilot, so he said fucking bet. Like that has to be what this is, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
There's no other explanation for how ugly it is.
Yeah. I mean,
not even stylistically a match to the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was pretty universally what the interpretation was. I guess the people who were watching, I can't remember if was this one on a stream as well.
I have not seen it, but I have seen people talking about watching video of it.
Yeah, and like again, since I had people I know who were there, like people were audibly groaning and booing. And yeah, like my thing is that like I get that on one hand, like hell yeah, malicious compliance. However, like I don't think generative AI art is funny even for a joke.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
I mean,
my only thought being, if his boss told him he had to do it, I guess, you do it in a way that your whole audience is going to groan and laugh.
Yeah. I mean, so hopefully that was the outcome he was looking for. And, because people were not feeling it. I do take that back. Like, if it is one of those, like, remember when Midjourney was the big thing, and there was like people with 8 fingers? Like, I would cackle. I used to cackle at that and like send it to our group chat. Like, oh my god, look at this. She has 3 knees. that's different, but
And not where you'd think.
Oh no. Like actively creating generative AI for the purposes of LOLs, knowing that it's like what it's doing to the industry and the environment. I'm like,
Yeah. No, big same. We are long in the tooth officially.
We
It's
are.
time to
Oof.
wrap this up. So after this monster-length keynote, we've got our initial public looks at the bold new vision for multiple systems for the next decade of Final Fantasy XIV. And, having seen this all laid out, seeing the follow-up panels detailing some of the changes, I think quite a few of us are actually really excited about what the future holds for this long-lived MMO. That's kind of a unique feeling. I don't feel like that comes around too often for these games when they're this old. That having been said, I would like to wrap up by asking you what you thought overall, and if you had any good or bad thoughts on the future of the game based on what we saw.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was overall very positive. Leading up over the past few months, Yoshi P has been talking about like, the next decade of the game, and some people are like, oh yeah, right, like it's gonna last that long, right? I mean, you say that, and like World of Warcraft is still going strong after 20 years. Final Fantasy 11's still hanging in there, right? EverQuest and stuff like so. I mean, thinking of Final Fantasy 14 still being around after 20 years is like not like I don't get why people are like, oh yeah, right, this game's going downhill or whatever. That being said, seeing them kind of outline how they're evolving the game, I think that that's going to really lead it into the next decade and be able to grow in a way that is kind of adapted to the gameplay of today. Like, I think it's a unique position that, unfortunately, a game like Final Fantasy XI didn't quite have the technology or infrastructure to do. Every time I've tried to get into Final Fantasy XI, I'm just like, oh, I can't. It's just,
Girl,
true
literally
getting
to the title screen is a fucking challenge.
Play online if you're lucky, girl.
Right? It's the fucking secret first boss of the game.
Yeah, so I mean, so for those things, like not even talking about that, they're setting up like a whole new narrative arc. Like, looks like we're gonna be like trying to save the other shards or whatever.
Yeah, they gave us a couple of real big teases that storyline wise that we didn't even touch on here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of locations that have been like hinted at for years that we know are going to certainly be coming someday. So like, I was already getting back into spending more time with the game. I've never like unsubscribed. I've never been like, oh, I just don't want to play it. I had been playing it less. But if I hadn't already been starting to kind of increase my time again with the game, oh girl, this would have hyped me into being like into it big time, right? Like I just think overall this FanFest really is kind of one of the most hype ones, right? Like, not that the other ones were bad in the past, like girl, just Square Enix really did their big one this time. And yeah. I think they kind of had to because, again, I enjoyed and continue to enjoy the 7.x content, right? Like, I am a Wook-Lamont apologist. I enjoy Dawn Trail, and I think that it told a good story. I was gagged at some of the things they did with, subverting some expectations, but it was probably the most polarizing one since Stormblood, which, again, I like Stormblood a lot. So I kind of think they had to really kind of, make a splash, so to speak, because I feel like not that they did brand damage, but I think they kind of had to restore the confidence of some of the player base. And just from what I've heard, when I've seen online, a lot of people are really, buzzing positively about this. There's people posting about it. I was like, I didn't know you played 14. Like, let's meet up in game, right? Like, so the fact that
I've seen so many mutuals who are talking about coming back, just a level of enthusiasm for the game that I wouldn't have expected to see this long into its lifespan, which is kind of what I was trying to say. It's just kind of really rare to see happen. I'm really hoping they can execute on it in this moment.
For sure. So I will be looking forward to, the coming months, more news about Evercold, and girl, I can't wait till January. I'm sure we're gonna have to do a first look at Evercold. It'll be like
Evercold.
Evercold. To be fair, I stole that joke from you.
Ah! All right. Well, then that is as good a transition as any. It's time to wind down by talking about what's up.
I said, hey, what's going on?
All right, let's see. The first game I have played over the last month, and the one I played the vast majority of in that time, was Pokopia. I will be talking more about Pokemon Pokopia during our focus episode discussion, so I won't talk about it too much here. But I do want to say, I was so taken by this game, both from a narrative and gameplay perspective. Even after I completed the Pokédex, which I did really fast, I still could not put the controller down for weeks. I was still playing this game full time every day. I have a nearly completed island dex on one of my cloud islands. Like, we're down, I think we only need like 26 more or something. But it's just, I'm having so much fun. I'm just making all these little worlds, befriending all these little Pokemon. It's just been a really wonderful experience. I'm really impressed, and I'm really, really excited for the future of Pokemon as a brand, that we are still getting titles like this coming out where, the Pokemon version, Pokopia, is better than the Dragon Quest version, Dragon Quest Builders. That's exciting to me because, again, for a franchise this old, I don't expect to be surprised to this degree the way that I have been by Pokopia. What about you?
Yeah. Well, girl, I mean, I know you're gonna save it for the focus episode, but talk about some of those very impressive builds that you and your husband have done on the Cloud Island. Every time I go and there's something new, I'm like, oh my god, I
Have
cannot
you ever
even
been to
compare.
the island in the sky?
I mean, I remember the big waterfall, but
The day I built that waterfall, I actually built a whole island in the sky. It has about 20 Pokemon living on it now.
what? Okay, I need to check this out later tonight. But yeah, I have also been spending most of my time playing Pokemon Pokopia. I will also save most of my discussion for the upcoming Pokopia episode. But I would say, yeah, that it's taken up about 90% of my gaming time since we last recorded. Last time I had spoken about that I was close to finishing the story. I have definitely done so since then. I specifically have not finished the Pokédex because I've been spending so much time on my Cloud Island. And I'm starting to, you're building all these, you're building Sky Islands. I'm like, hey, I went to a Cloud Island and destroyed an apartment and then kind of rebuilt the same apartment from scratch. I did build a little house, just a little 1-story, 1-room house that, I put kind of in my main street near my Pokemon Center, and it's where my husband's Scyther and Machoke live with me.
Aw, cute.
And I want to save most of this for the game, but or the discussion. But yeah, I just gonna stop myself now because otherwise, some of the talking points that I'm really excited to talk about in another episode, I'll spoil right now. So
Wig, I get that. Let me
Yeah.
then talk about the other big one. This is what I've been playing for now this specific last few days since it came out. This is Vampire Crawlers.
Oh yeah.
I cannot put this shit down. It will absolutely be a part of my Game of the Year discussions at the end of the year. I'm pretty sure. What I really love about it is that it is a deck builder, but it basically skips right to the fun part of deck builders, right? Because in all of these games, you're really hoping to have a run that's good enough to break the game. And I hope I have a run that goes so good, all my synergies work out, and I'm unstoppable and roll the dungeon.
Yeah, like Blatro.
Well, yeah, exactly. And Vampire Survivors, and thus Crawlers, is a game that is just about that feeling. So Vampire Crawlers, once you've gotten into it, is basically about breaking the game and then reaping the rewards for your entire run. I have only about 20 unlocks left. I say about 20. It's actually more like 17 or 18 now. So under 20. I have done more than 100 unlocks. I'm having such a blast. Every time I unlock a new card or a new crawler, which is what they call like the playable characters that have their own effects that happen each hand. Each time I unlock a new feature, I end up being delighted by the game in a new way. I've already put like 20 some odd hours in. It's only been out a few days, and I'm already like wondering about when they will do expansion content and new DLC and what have you. I'm just having a really great time. It was only like $10 for the price. I'm incredibly happy, especially. But like, even if it had been a full price game, I think I probably would have had a good time with this one. Oh, what about you, Slaggy? What else have you been playing?
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, I have been playing Final Fantasy XIV. I'm not quite back full swing the way that I typically play this game. Like, for example, I still have not finished the current stage of the relic weapons, which involves grinding content, which, it's fine. That's what, traditionally the relics do, but I just have not gotten close to doing that because I haven't been playing. But, I have been, especially now with the FanFest hype, been really excited about the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV with an expanded free trial, which you can play through the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heavensward, Stormblood, and Shadowbringer suspension up to level 80 for free with no restrictions on playtime, which you should go do. I had been wanting to try to finish the PvP series rewards. I am definitely not going to. It's okay. I'm not going to have FOMO. They typically have been now adding these in, a year or so out, or at least, the following expansion at the latest. Because I think they've only been doing it since Endwalker, I believe. So, we've gotten some of those Endwalker PvP rewards that you can get with the PvP currency that you win. So, like, it'll be fine, right? What I've been spending most of my time doing is doing the Moogle Tombstone events. I love going in, like, doing some of the content that's, less frequently visited. And one of the cool things this time was the Ultimog Challenge, which is, like, basically each time they do this Moogle Tombstones event, which is, currency that you can spend on rewards that are either unique or hard to obtain, like some of those savage mounts and stuff. Or extreme mounts. So the one that you get the big payout is if you do 5 treasure maps. And so, like, I'd never done the treasure maps. For some reason, I had always expected that they were kind of like harder content. But one of my friends who actually is flying back, or probably at this point back home from FanFest at this point, but was like, yeah, no, it's really not that bad. They're kind of just like fates, basically. So invited me to come do it over on the Crystal server with some of his friends, and they're pretty fun. They're just, again, they're kind of like the fates. There's a couple of boss light mechanics. It's definitely nothing like that Occult Crescent level of, oh, you're gonna definitely die. Like, it's not even like a raid boss, or really even like, it's maybe like an easy dungeon boss at the hardest. And so, like, I was like, oh, cool, like, this is cool. You get some really cool rewards from them. And I've basically, like, done them every week now. Like, they're fun. I'm really looking forward to, by the time this episode's airing, I'll probably have already started to check out patch 7.5. Check out the new Sandoria raid, which is the conclusion to the Venediel Alliance raid series. And especially excited about, now that we know Evercold's coming, they said that the MSQ is going to tie right into, Evercold, so very excited to see how that's going to play out.
Absolutely. All right, and for me, the last game that I played more recently was Pokemon Champions. This has been a really controversial release. I've seen some people who I like and respect really, like, fundamentally against this game and its existence as a free-to-start game. I personally find it very cute and fun. I have not found it to be exploitative Although I will note that I am someone who already has Pokemon in Pokemon Bank, so I was able to use those. I didn't have to overly rely on the in-game recruiting mechanic. That having been said, because of the in-game's recruiting mechanic, and I did use it, I ended up getting a couple of Pokemon that I've never really used before, but which were very strong. One of them is a shiny Kangaskhan. I'm not usually a Kangaskhan fan, but I also had the Kangaskhan Mega Stone, which makes the little guy jump out of the pouch and get his own second attack in the round, which has actually won me matches multiple times. And so now I'm like, okay, I stand Kangaskhan now after all these years. So I don't know. It's I'm having a really good time with it. I'm not really engaging with the microtransactions, which do exist, and probably Pokemon games shouldn't have microtransactions. I think that's probably a broadly true statement.
Yeah.
That having been said, for me, I'm having a good time with it, and I, am eager to see what happens when they continue to increase the pool of available Pokemon, because right now it's only a couple hundred in it. So it'll be interesting to see when they get
a couple hundred.
I know, right? It'll be interesting to see when they
Pokemon.
get to 1,000 plus.
Oof. Have they fixed any of the performance issues? That's what kind of made it difficult for me to engage with it. Was that
they did do a patch, and I believe it addressed issues, but I will say, I was playing it on that first day, and while I did see the frame pacing issues that you had been describing as looking pretty ugly, and then, they don't look good, I still thought it looked all right. And I haven't really felt that way recently, so maybe they did fix some of the stuff.
Oh, good. Well, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. All right. All of this having been done, all of this having been said, take us away to the exit lude.
All right. Our social links question of the week was, ahoy, mateys. This week, we're back to catch up on current events, including Final Fantasy XIV FanFest. Have you been following along with the announcements? What are you excited about? We heard over on Blue Sky from Spring saying, I'm very excited for the ability to choose a full spectrum of colors for skin, hair, or fur when customizing a character, as well as the new evolved skill forks for jobs. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Super exciting. I'm likewise excited for customizing my character, and will likely use a Fantasia of some kind, even if it's just like a new haircut or something.
Well, girl, you just can go to the esthetician for that. Yeah. We also got a reply from first-time commenter, I believe. Point North. My
he used to comment on the old days all the time.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. So I feel really bad about that, and also about that terrible Pinky impression. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I welcome back. That's my old man brain working against me. So Point North says I'm looking forward to the not battle pass they preview to replace weekly tomestones. I'm cautiously optimistic about the evolved mode for combat jobs, but most of all, I'm looking forward to Beastmaster. I have to wait until September.
Oh my gosh! Right?
Same. Especially, I know you're mad about the Blue Mage, and now we can't even play Beastmaster until September. But
right?
Yeah. So,
I am still big mad about that. I will say I was excited enough about everything that it wasn't really worth bringing up. But since it came up organically, I am still big mad about the lack of Blue Mage updates this expansion, because that is something we were promised when we were sold this expansion.
Right.
And I think it's important that we hold these developers with full respect, because I'm very sympathetic to the negative stuff they have to deal with. But if you promise us a feature in this game, in this version of the game, it should come with this version of the game.
Yeah. I just made the connection. The reason why I totally blanked out on Point Narf is because I don't think of that person by their username. I have not thought about them by their username in a long time. I am going to go follow you after this point, and I miss you so much. I hope you're doing well, and I
think the world of that person.
Hear for you. Yeah, no, I
fucking cutie.
Yeah. No. I am like so happy to again. I just did not. I totally blanked on the username, but once I was like, wait a minute, I know who that is. I am so happy to hear from you. Thank you for stopping by. I also didn't know you played, so I am going to be hitting you up for your server and all of that.
That was literally my thought too.
I'm so thrilled to hear from you, and I am very eager to reconnect. So, last but certainly not least, over on the Voice of Geeks Discord, where, if you're a member of that Discord, we do post our social links question of the week there as well. We heard from longtime listener Mike Deft, saying pretty excited for the Switch 2 version of Final Fantasy XIV. I am not sure if that means that Mike Deft is looking forward to trying it for the first time, or also a 14 player, and I just never realized it.
Yeah, but, right.
Right. So thank you. Always good to hear from you, Mike. And thank you,
noted,
everyone.
We're excited too.
Yeah. And we love your feedback. We love your subscriptions, ratings, and reviews. We adore when a longtime listener reconnects with us. Again, shout out to Point Narf, but also thank you to everyone who supports us. Again, oh my god, I just feel so guilty about blanking out on that username. So if you are a current listener, you probably are aware that we are on Blue Sky. And if you know someone who was a longtime listener, direct them over to us at gamebuoy.org with an actual dot.
Gamebuoy.org with an actual dot.
And we definitely, with the changing landscape of social media, I know, unfortunately, probably maybe, and our years-long hiatus, maybe you lost touch with a couple of you, and we would be thrilled to welcome you back into the SS Buoy. We are also on Mastodon at GameBuoy at MSTDon. GameBuoy at MSTDN.games.
At GameBuoy at MSTDN.games. And I did think about saying MSTDon.
Right. MSTDon. If you are on MSTDon, or people who are there who are former listeners of ours, we'd love to, if you could point them in our direction over there. And you can email us at gamebuoy.org at gmail.com with the .org spelled DOTORG.
Gamebuoy.org at gmail.com with the .org spelled DOTORG.
Remember how we always did that with our handles? Oh, those were the days.
Those were the days.
And it's because our home base is gamebuoy.org.
Gamebuoy.org.
And as always, if there's somewhere else that you would like to see or hear GameBuoy, the podcasting landscape has changed a lot over the past few years. R.I.P. Stitcher Radio. It was a good one. I like Stitcher. We'd love to know where else you might like us to go. You might notice I have not been mentioning Internet Archive. I will get around to archiving us on Internet Archive. I've just kind of been not mentioning it because I have not been able to, because IRL been busy, and my priority is making sure that we're supporting the current episodes rather than archiving, the episodes on Internet Archive. But
do what you can do as you can do it.
Yeah. And we would like to point you in the direction of our friends of Buoy.
If you're friends with Buoy, then you're friends with me. If you're down with Buoy, then you're down with me.
All right, as ever and always, I'd like to point you in the direction of Orange Lounge Radio 2DX. Where every geek has a voice, our friends and inspirations, please join us in looking forward to the new OLR 2DX Odyssey. I'd also like to point you in the direction of Aftermath. In their own words, Aftermath is an independent, worker-owned website about video games, other media, and internet culture. In my words, they're the audience-supported, hint, hint, site that many of our faves have landed at. We cite them all the damn time, and we strongly encourage you to check them out, as well as to support them if you like what they do. I'd also like you to check out Game Mechanics, where they kick the tires and run diagnostics on tabletop experiences. Hosts Logan Jenkins and friend of the show, Greg Leatherman, have been playing games for decades and have designed and released several games themselves. Please check them out. I'd also like to suggest Walloping Web Snappers, a Spider-Man podcast. Doug and Derek dive into every Spider-Man cartoon ever made, from the swingin' 60s through the rockin' 90s, to spectacular, ultimate, and beyond. Last, but definitely not least, is Neo Geo Go. Aaron and Andre take on the Neo Geo library chronologically and quickly. We could probably take some pointers from
Right.
them.
I was just gonna say, can you imagine this Game Buoy Go?
All right, Slaggy, who are you?
more like Game Buoy Go away, right?
Ah!
That was a Pokemon Go to the polls joke. And also, I just wanted to give a bonus shout out for game mechanics. I am absolutely looking forward to Domeskai Tamers, the upcoming release from Greg Leatherman. It is a monster catching tabletop experience. I absolutely hope that's one of our fellow friends who DMs will run the game. But I also would like to shout out to some of our fantastic friends and those that we follow that we wish were friends, but we aren't worthy, right? That being said, I would be remiss not to shout out the Bobby Blackwolf Show, a weekly internet radio show and podcast discussing the latest news in gaming, as well as sometimes reminiscing about gaming's history. Of course, Bobby Blackwolf is one of the co-founders of the Voice of Geeks Network, or VOD Network for short, which we are proud to be a member of, and we hope that we make them proud and not too embarrassed. I'd also like to shout out to the Nintendo Pal Block podcast. Friend of the show, Eddie V, is one of the hosts over there, and they dive into the week that was in the world of Nintendo, a world that I quite love. I would be remiss not to mention Sasha's Retro Bites on Blue Sky. Honestly, one of my favorite Blue Sky accounts to follow. She shares bites with a Y of vintage gaming, including magazine scans and photographs, and a lot of retro anime stuff too. It's just a vibe. Shout out to Sasha. Thank you for sharing all that great content. And I'd also like to shout out to Defunct Games, your daily source for modern video game reviews, exciting trivia competitions, and old school magazine analysis. And last but certainly not least, I would like to shout out Thomas Game Docs on GameCube. That would be kind of cool, but on YouTube rather, where every video covers a different aspect of video game history, such as game development and sound design for beloved Nintendo franchises. And I always love anytime she talks about why Link is so hot, because he is. And speaking of Link being hot, our wonderful theme music was done by the late great Zelda Reorchestrated, which is the project that reorchestrated beautiful Zelda music into gorgeous symphonic sound. Yes. And thankfully, that legend continues in the form of ZREO Second Quest. So go check them out and show your support today at zreosq.com. And last but not least, shout out to my hot robot boyfriend, Craig, and his evil but equally hot evil twin, Giark. They are our robotic recording engineer and backup engineer. Without them, Game Buoy would not be possible in the modern era, so definitely check out Craig and Giark if you're nasty for your Discord recording needs.
Did you say disco recording needs?
Burn, baby, burn!
The coming days, we will be back at you with a deep dive on all things Pokopia in an exciting look at the new Pokemon spin-off that has captured all our hearts and imaginations. And we're also cooking up something for Mother's Day. Stay tuned. But until then, keep gaming.
Keep gaming.
Keep thinking.
Keep thinking.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay strong.
Stay strong.
And see you, Space Cowboy.
Congratulations.
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 What?
Ever cold.
That was such a better idea than Everlong because I don't really like to talk about that band for reasons.
Yeah.
Might as well be calling yourself Ronald Reagan at that point.
Oof.
Now you say congratulations.
Now recording.
Really? Nothing?
Hey, Daddy of Light.
Ah. Did you ever watch that?
No.
Oh my god, it was actually like a really cute show. I don't know that it's on Netflix anymore, but it was officially subbed on Netflix for years.
Oh, it was on English Netflix? Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
I mean, that would all be Realm Reborn era, right?
I don't know that it was literally Realm Reborn, but it is very throwback. Like maybe there was one expansion out then, but like that's not really the focus of the show.
Right. No, I just thought it would be a cute time vessel to see, like.
Well, that's kind of what I mean, is that it is that, because it is still super throwback, just maybe not literally to Realm Reborn, but it is still delightfully throwback.